to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a number of presentations today. We'll start with Liz Hanley, who's here for the Community Housing Fund. What do you call it?
Fab.
Okay, whatever.
Fab.
Advisory Board.
Yeah.
Very
There you
good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm here today. I wanted to talk a little bit about potential funding for community housing for sale. I know that this is something that we have talked about, and funding has definitely been one of the obstacles to figure out how to do this, basically without using town funds. So I've spent quite a bit of time researching this and talking to folks, and we actually have here on Zoom Gwen O'Shea from the Community Development Corporation of Long Island. She's going to talk to us a little bit about what they do and some different ideas as to how to do this. So I just wanted to kind of ground in what we had talked about previously. We had the idea that's on the table is to potentially use town land, but with a land lease so that it could be held affordable in perpetuity. Now, one of the struggles or one of the challenges with that would be to how to pay for the housing, right? So for the Bowditch Road project, we had done construction loans that were secured by the folks who actually ended up getting the houses. And so we had been looking at a structure that was similar for future projects. The lending landscape has really changed. So it was difficult to find someone who offered flexible financing for a similar situation. So I'm going to introduce Gwen O'Shea now. So she's going to talk a little bit about Cdcli, what they do, kind of some options. And then this is going to be kind of an exploratory session, and she's really open to answering questions as to what the town feels is a feasible path forward and like kind of what's feasible for financing. So I'm just really here to facilitate this. Do you want to put Gwen up? Oh.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such an exciting opportunity for the town. It's wonderful to hear that such a conversation is taking place and potentially moving forward, as we all know that there is certainly a housing crisis, and the town is not any different than any other area on the island as it pertains to that. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all today. Thanks, Liz, for inviting me to chat. And as Liz mentioned, her and I, through our conversations, we're discussing some key areas potentially to put out, for the board to think about as food for thought as you go through this process, because we all recognize that, development is challenging and complex. In particular, post-COVID, things have changed, costs have gone up, and so it's really important to look at a variety of different aspects before moving things forward. So some areas that I'd like to focus on for our limited time today, and potentially there may be some follow-up conversations which we would welcome, is really looking at structure, as it relates to the property. Liz mentioned there are some parcels that the town is looking at. So how would you like to structure that property for potential development? The financing piece, what are some of the resources that may be available to bring this development to fruition? And then really looking at timing, because that will drive, I think, how the town potentially looks at the type of structure and the type of financing that might be available. So before I walk through that, I would like to take just a few minutes to share with you all a little bit of information about Community Development Corporation of Long Island. Cdcli, we always include the LI piece because otherwise people think we're the Center of Disease Control and they call with questions that we cannot answer. So it's a pleasure to be with you. We are an organization that has been serving communities for over 53 years, and that work has been on a very local community level to much broader regional support and development. And Cdcli recognizes that everything starts at home. And our mission is to make sure home is safe, sustainable, and accessible for all. we also recognize that everyone defines home differently. And so our work cuts across all of those definitions, from rental to home ownership and everything in between. So quickly, we have about 9 areas that we really focus on. We have a very robust home ownership center where we work with individuals interested in becoming home buyers, making sure that they have good credit, that they understand the challenges of becoming a homeowner, providing financial coaching and assistance when that's necessary. We also do a lot of post-purchase work, still working with individuals around foreclosure prevention, reverse mortgages for those that are in our senior population and struggling with the challenges of maintaining their home while all of the other costs around them increase. We also have a community development financial institution through which we do lending. So we are a regulated financial institution, and we lend across a broad array of different areas, from home purchase, down payment assistance to pre-construction lending. We have a robust rental assistance program where we work with veterans, families, and children to make sure that they can use rental assistance to find safe housing across the region. We have right now a very robust rental relief program as it pertains to responding to the financial implications of the COVID pandemic. We provide resident services across a variety of facilities and to individuals. We do a lot of work in community building and engagement. We have a home improvement and optimization department where we do rehab, provide grants, accessibility, rebuilds on homes, again, for homeowners that might want to age and stay in place or have an issue that has changed their accessibility needs within their home. We also do work around affordable and obtainable housing assistance, where we work with municipalities and developers to really look at taking their idea or vision into implementation and development. And then we have a robust housing development and planning department where we own, in partnership with a cross-section of for-profit developers, 1,600 units of affordable housing across the island. And we also manage 49 of our own single-family properties. So that's a little bit of a snapshot on Cdcli. And it's my understanding in my conversations with Liz that it has been a little while since the town has engaged in affordable housing first-time homeownership. And from what we've discussed and taking a look at some of the other presentations that you all have had, it really sounds like you're looking to maintain affordability in the long term through some forms of shared equity housing. And so how can that be realized? What are the types of options there? So there is something, and I'll just run through a few, and then want to go do a deeper dive into a couple of them for your consideration. You can use a model like a community land trust. You could use something like a limited equity cooperative. You could implement deed restrictions, or you could even think about furthering inclusionary housing policies that the town has in place. And so when we talk about affordable, long-term affordability, there's the question of like, why is it important? And I think you guys experienced that with some of the developments that had taken place previously, but the affordability period wasn't maintained. And so long-term affordability really maximizes the limited resources for affordable housing. And I want to underscore that affordable housing is a relative term, right? What's affordable to me or to you may be different than to someone else, but the idea is to create housing opportunities that do not put an undue financial burden on the household. And so we want to maintain that level of long-term affordability as long as possible. So when we talk about long-term, usually we would be using terminology like perhaps in perpetuity or permanent. And when we talk about affordability, that's really defined using the area median incomes, right? Recognizing again on Long Island that communities are unique and different, and what is affordable, or what is the average income of a community varies from community to community. We know that there's a huge gap on Long Island when we talk about affordable housing. So as we think about creating additional affordable housing, it's not just the AMI, the area median income, that's important, but also really assessing through a market study what is sort of the sweet spot for affordable housing, home ownership. So again, as Liz and I were talking, it sounds like there might be two options, and I'm happy to follow up or provide any more information after this meeting on any of the options that are out there. But two in particular that the town might want to consider. One relates to the community land trust, right? As we talk about sort of maintaining affordability in perpetuity, a land trust is a good way to do that. it really retains, the town would retain ownership of the land, and homeowners would own the improvements with a ground lease if you had, an affordable ground lease in perpetuity. The challenges, of a community land trust is that it takes a lot of work, right? There's the need to create a board. There's the need to have participation, ongoing participation of municipal representation, community representation, and other individuals from the community. But this really does allow for the house or the product to be affordable, in perpetuity. A second model, that might be something of interest to the town is the concept of deed restricted development. And deed restricted development is a little less onerous in terms of ongoing sort of management and even the setup of the structure, which really deed restricted development can be implemented by any seller, whether you guys would consider selling the property or again, having this sort of long-term land lease. And this really allows for the affordability to be maintained as new buyers may come in to purchase what has been developed by having that restriction in place. Some of the challenges with the deed restricted development are really making sure that there are the appropriate enforcements in place at the creation of the deed restriction development so that there isn't a sale that falls through the cracks, so that again, that affordability is maintained in perpetuity, going forward. And again, when Liz and I were talking, one of the challenges that came up related to financing, lack of affordable housing, challenges within the market was how to get to construction in a affordable way. And so a consideration, for the town as you sort of think about your next steps is the type of actual construction structure that you would like to see, whether you went with a CLT model, a deed restricted development, or another option. For all of those, you could look at something like a modular home development. This is a way to both reduce construction cost and it actually reduces the development time. So again, as you are thinking about sort of your ideal timing and rollout of the new homeownership creation, this is a way to really look at shaving some time off of the completion period. And this option, as would be the case with the stick development, could include a combination of either single family properties, townhomes, or one or another. And regardless which path the town chooses to go down, both from a structure of how you structure either the land lease or the sale of the property, what kind of construction you look for and opt into, whether it's townhomes, single family, stick build, or modular, there are a variety of funding sources that are available on the construction side and on the purchaser side to really help reduce the costs to ensure that you are able to create affordable, first-time home ownership for individuals. And those type of resources, whether you're talking about a 3 units to 20 units, staggered or phased in, they range from resources that are available through Suffolk County to federal resources that are available. New York State has significant funding available, as well as other private entities, whether that be the Federal Home Loan Bank or an entity such as Cdcli. However, I would recommend that regardless of what sources and what structure the town does look to undertake, that really having counsel be engaged on your behalf from the beginning to ensure that all of the development and the considerations and the policies are being done and managed under the fair housing requirements that are in place at the federal, state, and local level. And finally, what I would say is that I think, based again on the conversations that Liz and I had, that time is going to be a driving factor here. As you as a board look at and evaluate the ideal end goal, both the structure and the financing will be driven by that.
Thank you so much. It's really helpful. I mean, I just really appreciate your perspective on this so much. I definitely feel, and I don't know if you guys have questions.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
How would you walk us through the scenario of maintaining affordability but giving the homeowner some equity in their house? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and that's something that we always struggle with as an entity too. And I think it's a broader conversation that a lot of folks is that home ownership, right, is the main driver in terms of creating the middle class, right, and wealth within families. And so we want to make sure that people at any income level have the ability to do that. So there are a variety of ways. I'll just give one example. If you guys used the deed restriction development, you would have something in the CNRs that would require that when the property be sold, it be sold to an individual within a certain threshold of the area median income. And you'd work with a third party to manage that. There could then be language in terms of certain percentages over the market assessment. There could be language related to the amount of equity that could be earned by the seller. That's all language that could be built in upfront, so that again it's also clear for individuals who are looking to purchase and to sell what the requirements and the allowances would be there.
Okay, thank you. And a different question, really different question. We have a very, well, everybody has a specific problem to their communities with housing, but because we're an island, we're kind of unique. So our initial foray into housing is we're trying to help the people that are here or that had to leave or want to come back. So what's your experience with taking funding that opens the gates to anyone applying?
Right. So that question, I would say, ties directly into kind of my closing comments about fair housing, right? And so there are affirmative fair housing rules and requirements around not only sale but marketing as it pertains to whether it be home ownership or rental opportunities. And so there is a requirement that it be cast broadly and allowed, that there can't be unlawful, discriminatory, or restrictive requirements put into the process. I will say, as Liz and I were discussing, while the town is a beautiful location, it's not the most accessible, for people that may be living, an hour away. And so what we oftentimes see in our developments, and this is more specifically towards rental, but similar with even first-time homeownership, is that it's individuals that are already part of the community or looking to become part of the community, right? So that's the majority of individuals that end up, residing someplace, already a resident or want to make that place their home.
Hi, can you, is it permissible to restrict the type and or the amount of improvements done to a home over time, so that, for instance, a tennis court couldn't be put in? Not that there'd be room, but that's the sort of thing I'm thinking, like a luxury upgrade where that would then become part of the cost base.
So I do want to make sure I'm understanding your question. Are you asking about at time of construction, or are you saying like down the road, it's 3 generations
Down the road,
later?
so I'm talking about the keeping it affordable in perpetuity. If the homeowner does certain improvements, because I in my mind, there's these formulas that are based on CPI plus maybe the cost of the improvement that the homeowner did, coming out at the end with what you could charge for the house if you're going to as a resale. But if an improvement includes what I would consider, or maybe many consider, a luxury improvement, can you say that can't be, improvements are capped? Maybe that's what I'm looking for.
There are improvement caps. Yes, there are improvement caps for resale.
Yeah, and there's great examples of this actually, both in Southampton and East Hampton. Curtis Highsmith has walked us through in home rule of just you can't build, it's part of the deed restrictions. So you can't have a swimming pool, you can't build a garage because of the addition to the cost basis of the home. So it's really, I think the thing that I really learned in these conversations with Gwen was really having counsel involved from the beginning and setting up these deals the right way. So yeah, you can write all this stuff in. And the great news is is that Southampton and East Hampton have already done a bunch of this, made a bunch of
Right.
mistakes and like corrected. So we can like crib their notes a little bit. So.
So the equity build
Mhm,
that a buyer could expect over time
mhm,
would be some small inflation adjusted amount,
mhm.
but really it comes from paying your mortgage off and building your equity up over time and
Yeah.
not just, in this particular.
Yeah,
model,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not going to be, I mean, the idea is it's not going to be as much of a wealth driver as perhaps, another situation where the folks own the land. But the idea is that they're building equity in that mortgage
Yeah.
and not having to spend additional costs. So hopefully it will also,
Yeah, after 20 or 25, 30 years, you would have
exactly.
a nice little nest egg.
Exactly. That's the idea. And I thought the idea that came up around modulars, I actually thought was really interesting. I think that it could cut down on some of the construction time. B, there's some amazing and beautiful, like super green stuff that's happening out there with like, so, just really fantastic. And one of the other things that Gwen really brought to my attention that I don't think I'd really thought about was in the situation where you have homeowners, potentially first-time homeowners coming in with like a construction loan, who's managing the construction project, right? So if you can, it's either the town or it's somebody in between and they're getting a cut, and how does that work? Definitely something to think about. But if you were doing something like a modular development, then there's less construction overhead. And again, obviously it would be all about finding what would be appropriate and right and fit with the character of the,
Yeah.
but I think it's an interesting idea, and it's definitely a really different landscape than it has been like in the last 10 to 15 years. So that's kind of what we had for you. I think the deed restriction is a really interesting idea. I'm always a big fan of simple and less resources expanded. So that's really what Gwen and I wanted to present to you today. I'll leave this with you just to think of any other questions that you might have. And, I think it would be really interesting to have further conversations, because I think this is very plausible.
Amber, did you have something?
Yes, I heard you say, Gwen, that you manage properties. And I was just curious to hear a little bit more about that, because as Liz just said about like trying to keep costs down, one of the things I'm concerned about is we don't have a housing authority, unlike East Hampton and Southampton. So we're either looking for shared services, or if your organization does something along those lines, I'd be curious to hear what that is.
Sure. So let me take a step back and just, kind of underscore a little bit of what Liz was saying. I think that's something for the town to consider, right? As you have these parcels, would you want to have a long-term lease, and then sort of the maintenance or the structure there, the town would probably have to play a role, or have another, entity sort of manage that, versus maintaining the affordability by putting that in the CNRs and creating sort of an affordable development, and then you'd have a third party manage that from any sale perspective, but it would really put then the maintenance of the property on the homeowner, right? If that was sold off in such a way. So putting that aside, to answer your question directly, Amber, so through we have quite a variety of properties. The larger multifamily properties, we do not do the property management. We work with larger outside entities to do that from an economies of scale perspective. We do manage 49 of our own single family properties, which are all rental. We also have a small rent to own program, which is really an exciting program where we work with individuals who are interested in home ownership, but not yet there. We're not ready yet, whether that's because they don't have the down payment saved, or they need to still do some work on their credit score or their, financial health. And we manage those properties during the time in which they are the renter until they become the purchaser, and we take part of the monthly rental payment and actually put that in escrow to be used for the acquisition of the home. But we have worked previously, the cottages at Mattatuck were one of the first developments, not the first, actually, first developments go back to East Hampton, where we do work with the municipality to do that screening and that resale to make sure, again, that the requirements and that the policies and codes that the municipality has put in place, memorialized through their policies. We manage that moving forward.
Thank you. Stephen, anything on your end?
No, but I was wondering what your cost is for the municipalities to administer the programs.
So it varies, for smaller municipalities where there's a review, like it's a few $100s to do the review, to other entities that, if we're doing a development piece and we're sort of a co-developer there, we get all of our costs, whether it's the screening the individual, looking at putting together the pro formas for sale, bringing in the funding sources on both the construction side and on the acquisition side. There is an admin and or like co-developer fee that comes out of those pools to cover our costs.
All right, and actually one other question just popped into my head. What about a condo model? Is that in essence what this is, like the 99-year lease, or no? Well, because condos, they own the structure and the land. So do you have any affordable condominium situation?
We do not. It's certainly something, I'm happy to talk to my colleagues about and see, to get you some more info if that's, a feasible, model for you all, but I can't give you an example right now. The condo world is pretty small on the island.
Okay.
In particular in the affordable space, right? Market, yes, but we don't do a lot of work within the market space.
All right, thanks.
So Liz, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, sure.
I think this is going to be ongoing. We're going to be
Mhm.
seeing a lot of you as we get together to, we are in the process of putting the fund in place, but we also want to have a plan in place. And I guess all this will be incorporated into the plan you guys are working on.
Yeah, it'll be part of the plan. And I think, I think that there's also, I think it's important to, there is going to be, so the plan is for expending the money from the
Right.
the transfer tax. So I do think that it doesn't necessarily stop us from doing anything in the meantime. So I just want to make sure to just really consider those two things separately. I do think it's important that obviously that we're doing the plan and kind of thinking about that. And of course, with like the TDR process and all the things going on with sewer, it's not like anything's going to happen and like the end of the summer or anything like that.
Mhm.
But knowing what a process it is to review applicants and to put these financing pieces in place, I wouldn't want us to start in November and December to start to get these pieces in place, or, because this part of the process will take easily, I would say probably 6 months, 6 to 12 months.
Mhm.
So starting in November would
Right.
really put us behind. So,
Just a comment.
Yes, of course.
First of all, great start, Liz, and Gwen, thank you very, very much. I saw the four of us taking lots of notes. One thing I always would request is on these options,
Mhm.
can we make some materials available to the board? Explaining these options in a little bit more detail.
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And I think, and so I just wanted to you to speak to really Gwen, just to just make sure, obviously there's a way that I'm thinking about it. I definitely come to it with my community housing hat, and I'm an accountant and I think about it a certain way. And I just wanted to make sure that we were really matching up. The thing that felt most interesting to me was the deed restricted option. That felt really feasible. So I just wanted to kind of confirm before I started putting together more. Does that feel like that's where we should kind of dig in? So I'd be really happy to work with Gwen to put together more information on that, and just kind of really think about how that would be structured and what precisely the financing and the screening of folks would look like. So yeah, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you
Cool.
very much.
All right, thanks.
Very,
You guys.
very good start. Really
All right.
good.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you
Gwen.
all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Talk
Gwen.
soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gwen.
Okay, the next on the list is the Heights/Goat Hill project. Jim, you want to give us an introduction? to this?
Sure. All right. Today's goal At the request of Supervisor Siller and the town board, we've invited Stella Lagutis, who's the general manager of the Shelter Island Heights Property Corporation, our town engineer, Joe Fenora, and myself as the project manager for the town, to provide an update to the public on where we currently are with this particular project. In addition, we have identified and will discuss options on moving forward, the project forward. I will begin by providing you with a very brief overview of our past history of the project, as well as to share with you the tremendous interest expressed by specific governmental and environmental groups that have attended previous Zoom meetings, especially those in the last 6 to 8 months. This project has attracted the attention of significant groups of people who could be of tremendous asset for both the town and the Shelter Island Property Owner Corporation as the project moves forward. The first inkling of what goes back almost 5.5 years ago, back to the fall of 2016, where we began to exchange emails and correspondence between the town and the Heights. Jim Doherty was the supervisor at the time. John Cronin was the town engineer, part-time town engineer. I was a relatively new town board member, and we were actually in the very preliminary discussions of talking about a partnership opportunity between the town and the Heights Corp. Unfortunately, there was no significant follow-up discussions too much between that time and really late 2018 and early 2019. Both the Shelter Island Property Owners Corporation and the town formed a committee, the original committee consisting, of course, of Stella, Councilman Dixon, Sam Case, who works the Heights treatment plant and is a valuable resource, Tim Pertel, Greg Toner, Mike Higginson, and myself, who ultimately became the town project manager, who worked side by side with Stella, who really took charge of the project itself. Later, Jim Garrity joined the committee to represent the Shelter Island Country Club. Also, Bridget Fleming was an early partner in this discussion right from the get-go, and was the first leading advocate for the project to help recruit others. And I want to thank her very much. Bridget was instrumental in helping Stella and I get this thing going a little bit. The new committee was part of the interviewing process for future engineering firms that we would hire to conduct a new study for the upgrade of the plant and the possible recharging and/or irrigation of the Shelter Island Country Club's golf course. The town engineer at the time, John Cronin, supplied the committee with a fairly substantial list of engineering firms, which were qualified for the project. The committee selected 3 semifinalists, namely P.W. Grosser, H2M, and Hazen and Sawyer, based on specific criteria. Our finalists included H2M and Hazen and Sawyer. And in addition, the committee hired an outside qualified engineer to help us in the selection process. And Nick did a great job in helping the committee look into the, and he was a totally independent person in this decision. After additional interviews and presentations to the committee, we chose Hazen and Sawyer. The town of Shelter Island also was successful in applying for and being approved for a grant through Suffolk County that helped fund the initial phase 1, the first study. The study was completed with a draft report submitted on December 24th, 2020, roughly about a year and a half ago. I just wanted to cite some of the people that have been interested. And on February 24th, Stella put together an interesting panel of people. That was only a matter of 3 months ago for this Long Island Water Reuse Roadmap and Action Plan meeting, where they were looking at several projects. We were one of them, along with Greenport and maybe one other. And at that meeting, we had people like Peter Scully, who was the deputy county executive, Joyce Novak, and all her people from the county, Chris Kobler, and a whole bunch of people from Stony Brook University, Chris Clapp and Chris Murphy from the TNC. We had people from New York State DEC. We had the East End Environmental Group, Bob DeLuca, who was president, attend. We had the Department of State's DOC. We had the USGS in attendance, We had Cameron Engineering and their crew, which was substantial. I think they had 5 people there at that meeting. Green Tree Foundation, the Greenport Village, CTUC, which is a conservation Long Island wildlife group, Peconic Green Growth, and Hazen Sawyer and Steve Clough, who is the project manager for the Hazen and Sawyer, all attended a Zoom meeting. There was a lot of great discussion and kind of came out of that meeting feeling refreshed about the interest in this particular project. You know, Stella's done a lot of work. She is in best position to probably brief the town because she knows that plant pretty much inside and out and knows the steps that we've taken. We would be nowhere in this project without her leadership. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Stella Lagudas to come to the microphone and kind of walk us through where we're at.
Okay.
Bill, you want to sit with us or you want to,
Oh, I prefer.
are we going to do the, you're going to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
is it okay? if I
Yeah,
sit?
sure.
Just grab that microphone right there. Put it right to your in front of you.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll figure it out. So thanks, Jim, for that. He's answered, I think, all the questions. So now if anyone else wants to say anything, I'm done. I have nothing to say. In seriousness, though, this has been a really great project, and I do want to thank the town board and the Goat Hill board for also just getting in the canoe and trying to run through this feasibility study. I think it's very fitting that today you all have had presentation on community housing and now some presentation on how to improve the water, and obviously those are your top 2 priorities, as we all know. So I don't think we have to rehash the importance of the quality of our drinking water and the quality of and the importance of the quality of our surface waters. But this was really this project was really born by I think partially the board of the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corp wanting to do their part to contribute to all the efforts that you're doing. So Christine, if we can go to the next slide, please. So in terms of the, you all, can we just go back to one, Goat Hill, one more, I think. There we go. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you anything about Goat Hill that you probably don't already know in terms of it being a jewel in the crown of the island. But what I can maybe add to this is that, the irrigation is pretty much in the spring and the summer, the greens only. It's manual. It's a little bit of the Heights water. It's a little bit of the irrigation wells, and we're all at the hands of Mother Nature.
Correct.
And it doesn't always look great, although I have to say it's looking terrific. And thanks to, all the folks that did the recent upgrades to the Goat Hill. Because of the, we did some analysis of what it would take to just water the greens, and it's about 8,400 gallons per day. So there's a reason why we're not irrigating today, because when we irrigate, obviously that's taking water out of the aquifer. One thing to just park in your minds, and you guys already know this, but for anyone watching, is that, there are 2 water districts that have wells on Goat Hill. So we're going to kind of park that because we're going to come back to how that has impacted our ability to progress. In terms of the Heights, we're going to celebrate the next slide, please, Christine. I'm sorry. We're going to be celebrating our 150th anniversary this year. We are a private homeowners group, and we've been offering community water and wastewater services since the inception of the community. The wastewater district is one of 100 small wastewater treatment plants in Suffolk County. In addition to those 100, there are also 30 municipal, which I don't know if we're going to become one soon or not, but that would be great. We are under the auspices of the DEC and the Department of Health. They come in, they give us inspections, they test us, we test, we compare notes, and we are what is known as an SBR, or sequence batch reactor.
And all that means is we get the influent in, we pull out the big parts, we actually put some oxygen in there and the bugs chew away and do their job. We then separate the liquid from the solid goes off island, the liquid is heavily treated, and it is dispensed into the effluent. The treated effluent is dispensed into the sound. And we are able to put 53,000 gallons of water per day into the sound, treated, of course. And to give you an idea, these days we're probably averaging somewhere around 15,000, and our peak is somewhere around 41,000. On the next slide, please, Christina, we're talking about the project goals. Just to reiterate what Jim had said, goal number one was, get rid of the surface discharge. That would be great. Goal number two would be, in my mind, also great, to eliminate the negative perception that goes along with the surface discharge. And, I do want to just point out that on average, and many of you know this, a cesspool or septic system can put anywhere in 65 milligrams per liter to 100 into surface water when you're in the nearshore overlay. Our plan on average dispenses between either 8 and 22. So, yes, we are putting nitrogen into the bay, but we're not putting it near any level near where it, people might perceive it to be. But you know what? It's kind of like you don't have salt because you have high blood pressure. You can have a little bit of salt. That's okay with your doctor, but you can't have a lot of salt. But getting rid of it would be good for not only the water, but also good for perception.
But it does meet all the standards that.
Absolutely.
It does meet the current standards, which is important. I think the Heights is just looking to, looking ahead in case the standards do change, or just to eliminate anything going into it would be great. In real life, if this project moved forward, the pipe would remain, by the way, and only be used as an emergency situation. So that would be,
Yeah. So those are perfect points. So we talked about recharging the aquifer. And at the end of the day, we have to also remember that the plant itself was not built for what we're looking for it to do today.
right.
In this feasibility study. So in order to get to those goals, what we need to do is upgrade the system to become a tertiary treatment system. Right now, we're a secondary, so that means changing some stuff around. We have to introduce ultraviolet disinfection, which is, could be pretty big, but it also will bring us to a standard that is the only standard in the country, which is the California Title 22 standard, which is probably the most strict standard on the amount of nitrogen that would be released into groundwater. We'd actually have to pump up to Goat Hill, so we'd have to lay some piping down to the tune of 3,700 feet. And we would need to install leaching pools because we do not anticipate that all the effluent would be needed for irrigation, especially since we're not irrigating off season. So we need to do something with it. So why not put it back in the aquifer so we can improve the quantity of the water as well?
Yeah, during this process, by the way, one of the interesting things that Stella provided in Hayes and Sawyer, there's actually 2 field trips into the plant itself. So I never had been inside the plant. It was an eye opener and very interesting the way the improvements that would happen inside the plant itself. And it is doable, by the way, if we should ever get to that point, which hopefully we will someday, that, this can be done during the off season. And basically there are 2 chambers right there.
Yep, 2 tanks.
Two tanks. And we would take 1 tank and work on 1 tank during the off season, early in like late fall and early winter. And then tank number 2, we work on in late winter and early spring, and actually be able to hopefully pull this thing off in between the heights of each one of those seasons. So it is a major upgrade to the plant, and it will be a lot of good things that come out of that if the plant is updated, especially with the tertiary treatment there.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. Christina, can we go to page 6, please? So Jim already mentioned a lot of what's on this particular slide, but the one thing I want to just mention is the second bullet from the bottom, which is the proof of concept. So up until the Riverhead plant coming to the foreground, this was all talk.
Right.
Irrigation, taking, the effluent and turning it into irrigation for a golf course. Well, Indian Island is a really good example of this. So now that's gotten the Department of Health, the DEC, all of them have gotten much more comfortable with this concept. So if the next slide, please, Christina. On this particular page, I'm going to take you back even further down memory lane,
Right.
because Jim had mentioned this was like kind of a glimmer in our eyes in 2016. It actually started in 2010 when the Heights on its own hired Grosser to look at a feasibility study. And it looked at not only the irrigation, but should we be expanding the district or not? And we spent about $38,000 on that survey and that feasibility study. It did demonstrate that it was feasible. It demonstrated that it was expensive. And it also demonstrated that the town and the Heights at the time were not aligned in their priorities. And frankly, to do what needed to get done to get to the level of clean water for irrigation, the Heights just couldn't do it on their own financially. So we kind of threw that out. On the right side of this page is really where what happened with Hazen and Sawyer. Jim spoke to this, so I'm going to just ask Christina to go to the next page. So on page 8, we have here that the phase 1, we identified the goals. Again, the 3 goals were get it out, get nitrogen out of the bay, recharge the aquifer, and do the irrigation so we can beautify Goat Hill. In doing the initial analysis, Hazen and Sawyer looked at 5 options. Option 1 was do nothing. And that was fine because obviously the Heights is running this district. We have to keep putting money into it, and we will do that. And as long as we need to, which is hopefully forever. Option number 2 was to look at something that is kind of improving the sequence batch reactor capability. Item number 3 was looking at membranes and seeing what we can do there. Option number 5, if we skip over, because these were all different flavors of vanilla ice cream in the middle, was forget the plant we have and let's rebuild one somewhere else, which, nobody wanted. Yeah, exactly. PJ. It's like nobody wants to do that.
Now, the expense there would be significant. And I do want to point out 2 things. The MBR is new technology that, proven technology that works. And the other thing is that the Heights, I don't want to give the impression that they don't upgrade. They do consistently upgrade the plant. It's not like it hasn't been touched in 40 years. The plant has been significantly upgraded. This would be well beyond that. This would be taking the existing building and kind of reshaping it, with this new system, and it would be a major upgrade to the plant.
Yeah. And, we really we didn't want to change the footprint at all. So as we decided to go into the deeper dive, when we looked at those 5 options, the deeper dive of the MBR was really, we thought, the best option because it's more turnkey. So it's got everything integrated, like the UV could be integrated as well. And at best, we'd have to maybe increase the footprint of the building by about 280 square feet.
I don't think you'd even notice that, by the way. I mean, it'd be very, very, very minor compared to the footage that,
Exactly.
Don't touch that parking.
No, I know. PJ.
It's
It's like, we've got neighbors to be considerate of. We've got the ferry leases the parking lot. We've got the beach club. I mean, so clearly there are a lot of inputs.
It would be simply a little bump out, a small little,
Yeah.
like a closet type of,
Yeah,
type of
exactly.
thing,
Exactly. Christine, if we can go to the next slide. So, the good news is that this is feasible. The bad news is it's still expensive. It was expensive in 2010 and it's more expensive now. So once we got the delivery of the cost from Hazen and Sawyer and we all got scraped off the ceiling, we decided that we had to take a deep breath because we think that this is still a good project and there's a lot of money out there for money at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level. So we would not be doing this. I mean, the town couldn't afford to do this. The Heights couldn't afford to do this. We would need to be reliant on a tapestry of grant funding in order to get this done. But just to give you an idea, to upgrade the plant is almost $6 million. That's to get us to the tertiary treatment. To get everything up to the golf course is another 3.6 million. There's one-time engineering, legal survey, and all that other softer stuff that goes into it. But I will say that this includes a 30% contingency, which basically means based on
Right.
the amount of work and dive that Hazen and Sawyer did, they wanted to protect themselves. And they added a 30% increase to the costs.
Which
So if you
inflation
Yeah,
has
well,
already
exactly.
used like half of that.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
PJ. So, but without that contingency, without the inflation, we're talking somewhere in the vicinity of 8 to 9 million. So if you go to page 10, please, Christina, thank you. The timeline is really that, we have to do all the engineering reports. A lot of this is already in flight. We need to figure out how we're going to get that tapestry of funding. We need to get the specifications. We've got to go out to bid for this. This is a full-blown construction project, and these are very heavy numbers. So these, again, are conservative numbers. So Jim had mentioned that we might be able to do this, alternating tanks in 6-month interval. They doubled it to 12 months, again, just to be sure. So I think the punchline is on page 11, at least one of the punchlines. And if you look at this, we're at a crossroads with this project. We already mentioned that it's daunting that the town nor the Heights will have the ability to do this on their own. And I mentioned earlier about those drinking wells that are on Goat Hill. And we have previewed these plans with the two legislators, both Fleming and Krupski, and all the people at the DEC and the Department of Health. And everyone's really excited. I mean, I've not seen people excited about this project, again, because there's proof of concept and this is really going to be a helpful project. The only concern that was raised had to do with the proximity of those leaching pools to the drinking water. And right now, based on the amount of analysis that Hazen and Sawyer did, they're saying that they had put the leaching pools into an area where the travel time for the water would be 1 to 2 years. Their preference at the DEC and the Department of Health would be in the 5-year. So it would be slower to get to the wells. So therefore it would clean out even more than what was put in the ground.
Yes, can I ask one? Do the leaching fields have to be where there's a kind of?
They don't.
Okay.
No.
And that's like a really
That's
perfect
what-
question to
yeah,
ask.
yeah.
So the next bullet point right there is we need to do some more analysis to see if we can't recharge in that part of the golf course. Is there another part of the golf course, or is there somewhere else in the Heights or, close by that we can do that? Plan B would be that we identify an alternative. It could be that we adopt the Riverhead business model. Now, why is the Riverhead business model different? I already said they're already on the MBR, they're doing the UV. The difference with them is that they are only sending to the golf course what the golf course needs to irrigate. And they're continuing to surface discharge.
But from a tertiary plant.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they're below their 10 milligrams going into Riverhead Bay. And the golf course is only getting what they want to do. So yes, that's a great option. Unfortunately, that would kind of get rid of one of our goals, which is to recharge the aquifer if we did that. But it's still a good thing. We could also completely change gears and work with the town on some other option to be discussed and analyzed further. But that would be, in effect, starting over, just with the common thought that we all want to work together, and the concept of a public-private partnership is doable. And then, of course, we could do nothing, which doesn't mean nothing to the Heights, but it means nothing to the town, where we would just continue our business as usual upgrades. So on the last page, page 12, in a summary, we haven't really shared, I think, this level of detail with the public. And Jim's done a great job, but he's been kind of dancing around it until we felt it was ready for prime time. So, number one goal here is to let people know where we are. It's still in the feasibility stage. It still could fall apart. But we do want to endeavor to see this Plan A come to fruition. And in order to do that, we need about $65,000 more to complete it. And, we feel that we've all put money in. I mean, the town got a grant, the town put 30,000 in, the Heights put additional funding in for that third-party engineer. But we're so close. So we'd love to try to, fund that and determine if there is anywhere else on the golf course or on the island where the recharge can stay in the picture.
And one point there that I think I've made, but Jerry wasn't in the room, and I don't know if I had heard it, that Jennifer is pretty confident that we can get probably 30,000 of that 65,000 grant funded. That's an important piece. She's pretty confident that we would qualify for that. We'd be a good candidate. I pitched the last grant in Hapog with John, and I did the talking, and there were 28 projects going for 18 slots, and we finished high on the list. So I think we would finish high on the list again if we pitched it again, and then we'd have to look at the remaining $35,000, and we could talk about that privately between the supervisor and Stella. But I think we have some initial agreement there as well. So, but I think having that study, by the way, even if we don't end up moving the project along the way we wanted to, that information, because of the wells being located along New York Avenue, are so valuable. Getting a better understanding of ground flow there in that area is extremely, extremely important, because those wells obviously take care of the Heights. They also take care of the 70 customers on the West Neck Water. So it's good information to have. Just like the first study was very good information to have moving forward. If this plan fell through, then it would, the Heights would think about, but they have that information. It's good information to have. And so I just wanted to throw that out. That and there are some other things that might come into discussion between the town and the Heights, which is for probably for another day discussion. We have something specifically in mind, but we can talk about that. Let's see if what the study, if we can get this study funded, and then based on the findings from that study, then make the decision on moving forward.
We're so close.
Yeah.
We're so close. We're at a Fisher cut Bates situation.
Yeah, we are. We are.
And, I'm sure to some extent you all might be a little tired of hearing about it, especially those who've been at all these meetings. But I think we'd all like to see it and determine if we can either keep going feasibility, or if we need to change gears at all, or we just, kind of kiss, shake hands, and all go back and do our own thing.
Can you give us a timeline on that? So, how long before we know about the grant money? Then we engage the
grant monies, we probably would know in early fall.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think that we have to apply for it by July. Know by early fall. They'll probably meet in September. Know by fall. That study can be done in a matter of a couple of months, at most.
Oh,
I think
We're close.
We'd have that information by November or December of this year. And then we'd sit down and have that discussion.
Does it matter, Jim, that study would be done in the fall in a period of lower flow?
No, because similar to what we've done, we give the
Yeah.
history of our flows. We have to submit to the DEC what all our flows and all of our levels, and they would use historic data.
Okay.
And Joe's on the line, and I know Joe, if he's expressed one thing, is the price tag of the project. It doesn't matter whether we do the second study, if we did not get some, and Stella said it just 10 minutes ago, significant funding. I'm going to round it up and say it's a $10 million project or a $9 million project. If we didn't get it, 75% of that, funded, we probably are not going anywhere with that. But if in fact somebody, and a combination of grant funding, and there's no time better, the timing is everything when it comes to grant writing. There is more money available now to clean up the water. There's no better time, and there hasn't been a better time in the last 3 or 4 decades to be able to do this. This is the time to strike and try to get some major funding to get projects like this, like the municipal wastewater and other projects done. So, you don't know unless you try. And I think the effort here is that we're going to try. We're gonna try the best we can. And then, see what happens in the long run.
Joe, I'm going to bring you into the conversation, but before I do, here's my concern. We spent 60,000 plus on a study that basically told us we have to spend another 65,000 to finish the study. So I'm not really sure what we gained from the first study now that we have to do this second study. I'm not as.
No, the first study was completely different than what the second study is about. The first study was strictly aimed at hiring an engineering firm to come in and take a look at the existing plant, and could that existing plant be upgraded? That was phase one. In phase two, it was, would it be then possible if we introduced a tertiary treatment like UV treatment? And could we, in fact, because we brought up the fact that the golf course has limitations. The guys the highway department and public works did a marvelous job on both the building and the course. Anybody that's been by that in the last few weeks sees the major upgrade to that. The problem is you can't grow grass, and the perfect time to have an irrigation really is in September, early October, when you could reseed, get rid of the weeds, and actually get grass to grow. The golf course is strictly at the mercy of Mother Nature. The reason why the golf course stayed in such fine shape last year, Mother Nature cooperated. We got some rain last year, and the golf course was very playable. Plus the fact that they're putting more care into it. So there's better leadership there. They're making better choices.
Okay, but let's get back to.
Let me,
Okay,
if I may, Jim started, I'm just going to add. So what we did with the feasibility study, it can work. When we presented this to Peter Scully and everybody at the Department of Health, they wanted additional information to give them comfort to put their arms around the project. So this was not like you're studying and restudying. This is more of a continuation to give them the comfort in order to do it. So to be able to find either that the spot we picked works fine, or the spot to the left would work better, or that we might need to find another spot, that's really where we need to go, because without the DEC and the Department of Health support, we're not going to get this done. And it was their ask.
okay.
So what we're looking for is essentially groundwater modeling.
Correct.
What direction,
Yes.
at what point,
Exactly.
how fast is the flow, et
Exactly.
cetera.
By
Okay.
the way, I would like to add one thing. Stella just said it's their ask, but it should be our ask as well.
It's
I mean,
information
to
we
be
need.
very honest with you, it shouldn't be something that we would be comfortable in doing without the knowledge of how that's going to impact those wells. So understanding the water modeling in that area is a very important piece to the puzzle, not just for this puzzle, but for future reference as well.
It's also the irrigation analysis they asked for, which is, okay, we're going to irrigate. How quickly is it going to evaporate? What percentage of the water is actually going to percolate down?
Right.
So it was 2 components that went into the analysis.
Okay. So it'll be groundwater modeling and the irrigation analysis.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Joe?
Thanks, Jerry.
Chime in?
Yeah, thanks, Stella. That was a phenomenal job at breaking down a lot of information to some eager listeners. The next phase, since it's been currently discussed now, Jerry, with your last question, I would describe really as a siting analysis. What we sort of left off with the last study was where precisely can we place the leaching and dispersion structures at Goat Hill, if at Goat Hill, such that we have enough space given the soil conditions, and that we wouldn't be in conflict with any of the groundwater users in the area. So ultimately what has to be done is the consultant would look at what space is available, what space is needed, and then model the activities there to understand what will happen when we start putting this liquid in the ground. Our previous study really was more heavily focused on the project fundamentals, the space constraints at the plant, and the feasibility of changing the operating procedures and technologies within their existing footprint. But it ultimately fell short at, what happens after we get it up to the golf course. From a feasibility standpoint, we got it there, it works. But the health department did not review this report and feel like it was suitable for permitting. So the onus is on us to prove to them that this operation won't have any negative impact on groundwater users. I wouldn't say it's a surprise. It really is to be expected given the magnitude of the project. Ultimately, I think where we are with the project is reviewing the new information now. This project started in a previous administration. A lot of personnel have changed and a lot of new information has come to light with regard to this project. The costs are certainly higher than were originally expected when the project was first scoped. And one important step that we're at now is opening this project up for public discussion, public input, and certainly for the town board to understand the costs and the benefits of this particular project. And now would be the time, if any, to revisit what those priorities are for the town with this information in hand, knowing now that there's a lot of money in the pipeline federally and statewide to support these types of projects, understanding what other projects the town board has on its agenda that are high priority as well, and also the impact that this project might have on future considerations. One item that's particularly important that we didn't really discuss and we haven't really discussed is that if you cite this particular project at the golf course, it may prove to be totally safe or benign with respect to the existing wells, but it takes up a lot of space in an area which both the Heights and the town has used historically for additional groundwater sourcing. So, there's sort of some long-term planning that we have to consider besides what the immediate impact is of this project, but how will that change our long-term planning for the town and for the Heights as well if we were to go forward with this. So I'm not saying one way is better or the other, but this is sort of the prime opportunity to reconsider what those benefits are, the payouts and the risks, now that we have all of this information at hand at the conclusion of this report.
Thanks, Joe. Amber, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'm always thinking about money. If we can get a grant for the 30,000 of the 65,000, where's the other 35,000 coming from? Because we don't have that in our budget. So that's my first question. And then two, just the overall cost benefit, as Joe just mentioned, like it's such an expensive project. And even if we could get 75% funding, is it still a good trade-off? And also we're going to be asking for funding for the municipal wastewater treatment stuff. So going for that and going for this, would we be deprioritizing, one over the other? And that's a concern to me.
My concern, Amber, is, the first goal is obviously a very good thing. Remove nitrogen from the surface water if we can stop pumping into the sound. The second, recharge, I don't see that as a huge gain for the type of money we're investing. Watering Goat Hill, I don't see that at all. It's a nice
Said the
thing,
not golf.
but we're talking, $10+ million. To me, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, I think unless we can seriously consider hooking up Bridge Street to the Heights sewer district, it doesn't make sense to invest this kind of money. If we can talk about Bridge Street, it's an economic, advantage for the town. It's potential housing for the town.
Huge for the harbor.
It's huge for the harbor. Aside from what the Heights plant is putting out, everything that's leaching into the harbor right there and the creek. So it's just, I think we were all, socks were all knocked off with the price.
Yeah.
We didn't
Yeah,
think it was.
and by the way, we were too, because we actually thought that the price was going to come in a little over half of what we thought. We thought that the price may be in $5-6 million range. When it came in at 9-10, that was significant. To answer your first question, Amber, we've already talked a little bit about that with Supervisor. So when you come in on how we would fund that secondary study, if we were successful in getting that $30,000 grant, and there were $35,000 additional, that we would split that 50-50 with the Heights Association, and that we would use WQI money. Is that what you were talking about?
For the town's
For
portion.
the town's portion, correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that addresses that question.
How about the overall funding? If we went ahead with the whole project, how would we look at that?
That's something that needs to be discussed. I think that's way premature. But I think that's a discussion.
Well, it isn't,
for-
and it isn't.
No,
No.
and you're right, but that's something for if the second study came to fruition and if things went into place, whether phase 2 happened or didn't happen, but maybe Bridge Street happened instead, would you and Stella be able to sit down and be able to negotiate some, between the town and the Heights? That's something that would have to be done,
I just, Jim, in the past, the town has applied for grants. And then when they received them, they said, well, we can't come up with our half of that. So I just want to make sure that before we even think about applying for something over and above the 65,000, that we know how we're going to go forward with the project if we're going to do it.
Yeah, and one thing I will add, I mean, I think the world of Jen, right? So
Mhm.
she can be,
She'll
at
find
the-
it.
she'll
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
Any, if we kind of look at her as being Diana Ross, if she needs Supremes in the background, I mean, Hazen and Sawyer has resources to also
Well,
help with
plus now
that.
we have the Peconic Estuary.
So you've got
Fund, we have
Peconic
the
Estuary. I mean,
Legislators and.
from
yeah.
the Heights, I mean, the Heights isn't looking for a free ride. I mean,
Mhm.
we will obviously need to put money into the plan to keep it functioning at the highest level. So, there is money from
Mhm.
us. So,
Mhm.
until we know what it is,
Right.
I don't know that we could really understand, but I think we've got the pieces. We're just
Mhm.
trying to put them together.
So if we are on the hook for 3 million, just saying, down the line, right? It's at 25%-ish, ish, but 3 million amortized over 20 years, it's 150,000 a year, which is not much of a hit to the tax base. Just to put that a little bit in perspective, unfortunately, the interest rate market has sort of gone away from us, and who knows where that's going to be by the time this would actually be. But I just, that to me, to think of about a 20-year payout to cover the cost of the ungranted portion, at least leaves a little glimmer that it might be feasible.
We just have to keep in mind, what Amber reminded us, we're looking at a
Yes.
sewer project. We're looking at West Neck Water.
Yep.
We have to keep all these things in.
Well, I think, and Amber, I
But
think your
people
point
love
is we're gonna find out a lot sooner on the municipal wastewater than we are on this particular issue. I think,
Oh,
I
right.
think in terms of
It's timing.
the
right.
timing on it is they're not gonna be in competition with one another. We're gonna go strictly for the municipal wastewater monies. That's gonna be top priority to get that done. Just like, we would never put that up against, Real Point. We have a priority here. Our number one priority is to get rid of the nitrogen in the center of town. So we're committed to that. So that's our number one goal. So we're not looking at, however, everybody is telling us, or telling me anyhow, as a grants chairperson, there's tons of money out there. So I don't, whether we're talking community housing, or we're talking about Real Point, or we're talking about the Heights wastewater treatment plant, or Brigham Bridge Street Hunt, or municipal wastewater, or Fresh Pond, or any of it, we need to keep probing and looking and trying to find people that will support this. I can only tell you that on this particular project, there is tremendous support for it. So I'm pretty confident that there's, if we're going to minimize the cost to the town at all on this particular project. And again, it's a big price tag, but you don't know unless you try. So let's continue to march and try. And if we're successful, great. If we're not, the ball is back in the court of the Heights, and they sit down and they figure out what they're going to do going forward.
The thing with this Long Island Reuse and Action Plan group that Jim referenced and, Peter Scully and the Peconic Estuary are part of, when Greenport and we kind of presented where we were, they were very enamored by our project. They felt we were several steps ahead of Greenport.
Correct.
They liked the irrigation plus the reuse. If reuse was not in the picture at all, so Jerry, you were questioning the
Mhm,
value of the reuse, they wouldn't look at our project at all.
Right.
So, I think there's kind of benefit to the town for reuse, and then there's benefit for getting funding.
Right.
So I
Sure.
would just consider.
Yep.
both.
But, and Stella is exactly right. I scratched my head and said, I cannot believe how much they're, because they kept talking about the Riverhead, golf course and how wonderful, what a great thing that is. And that only solved a bit of the problem there, as Stella pointed out. They still put the, their treat, much more than they can use, right? Between us, I think the irrigation up at the golf course on a hot July, August day at night, 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, that's never going to get down into it's just going to wet the top 3 inches of soil to keep the stuff semi-green, whether it's weeds or grass. But the recharge is something that's different. And obviously that 1 to 2 year or the 5 year, which we were looking to get, again, it may not be physically possible to put it anywhere at Goat Hill. It might be an alternate site. So that's something we have to look at.
Joe, do you have anything else?
No, that's it on my end. But if the town board has questions or the public has questions, I can certainly be a resource to any of those folks.
Great, thank you. Amber?
Yeah, speaking to that, the WQI fund is not a piggy bank. We do have a process to go through. So if we're going to use money for this, we need to make an application to the WQI board so they can make a recommendation. If we move forward with it, then we need a public hearing on it. So we are a number of weeks in
Right.
process before we can actually know, before we submit a grant, that we've got our side of the funding in place. Because one of our grant policies is that before we apply for a grant through DEC or wherever it is, wastewater, that Jen is thinking of targeting for the 30,000, then we need to do a resolution and know where the funding's from. So.
Sounds
Okay.
responsible.
Stephen, anything on your end?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Stell,
Thank you very
Thanks,
much. And
Ellen.
this has
Thanks,
been a
Stella.
really
Thank you.
we'll keep
interesting
moving
journey.
forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Shoreline Access Task Force that's going to make the final recommendation. And just a quick history, Pete, you might as well join us too. It seems to work. This all came into place just about 2 years ago now, when we had we were inundated with people using Bootleggers Alley. COVID had started. A lot of people weren't working. We saw a lot of families coming over. 90% of them were there to fish, but they brought their families with them. And it became, it did become a problem. There were just too many people. There was too many cars in a small area. So we felt we had to address that, but if we were going to address that, let's really look at the big picture and look at, all of our access points to the shore. So we formed this group. Peter Vielbig chaired it. It was a pretty interesting group. I think in all the years I've watched town government, there were more people zoomed in to watch these meetings than any others. And it was a real good back and forth. So Peter, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joe. First, thank you for,
Pull your microphone on close.
thank you all for scheduling this time for us today. As you well know, it takes a strong collaboration to tackle these issues that Jerry just kind of outlined. And we faced in the late summer, early fall of 2020, and to accomplish our goals, we had to have this strong collaboration. And with that, I want to first acknowledge the tremendous efforts by Bo Payne, who's not here today. He had training, but I see him as the Jefferson and Madison of this group. Anyway, he did a terrific job, and he was called the clerk, but did much more than that. And much credit also goes to our committee members, Al Loretto, who was on the Waterways Committee and is a water rat and knows our waterways places really well. Joe Fenora, town engineer, so we had the expertise on the engineering side. Andy Reeve, speaking of water rats, professional mariner, fire department, hands-on guy, and also a fire commissioner, and he was really our public safety side of the thing, of the project. And then we also have to thank Brian Sherman, Dave Clark, and their crews at the Highway Department. They helped us implement a lot of the work that had to be done at each landing's signage. Thanks to my boss, Chief Reed, to keep us on target, to use the police metaphor. Anyway, he did a great job in directing us. And then for you, Jim, thank you very much for your liaison work. Jim did a terrific job in faithfully attending all our meetings, providing input to your constituents both ways, from your constituents to us and from us back to them. And we couldn't have accomplished as much as we did without your work. So thank you very much for that. And then I'd like to acknowledge past councilman Mike Bebon, who basically set out the course for us. And Mike left in kind of in the middle of it, but you all know what a great administrator he was and is, and he basically laid out our goals for us. And then, as you referred to, Jerry, we have to thank all the islanders who joined the meeting. We had sometimes as many as 30 people, and they gave their ideas. Some people used it as a soapbox, which is fine. People have to have a chance to speak, and others, were really, looking at an island-wide situation. I think that was, I kind of see it as a safety valve on a boiler, letting all these people attend and doing it that way. And I really, some people came to every meeting and some came to those that just interest them in particular. So thank you very much. Christina, if you could fire up the PowerPoint, please. I'm going to kind of run through this quickly, and because I know time is short, but if you have any questions and want to interrupt me, please do. We're going to have a little open session at the end. So this was our mission statement, and this is basically kind of a compilation of what Mike Bebon set out for us. Develop an updated database listing all town landings, recommend high priority town landings to be reviewed and make recommendations, and try and complete everything prior to the summer of 2021. So we came up with a report for you in March of 2021 and had pretty much all the signage and things in place by the summer season last year.
Right.
And then if town landings had to be recategorized, what are they? Town landings, ramps, shoreline access points, work on that. Next slide, please. And then create an overlay with the town GIS, which I'm going to show you a little later on. Evaluate the condition of each town landing, and each member of our committee went out and had a handful of, we had 70 shoreline access points. So each of our committee members went out and did an analysis, what kind of condition it's in, what it's in, is there a survey, all the things that we needed. So it was a pretty good inventory of our town landing points. And then provide recommendations to the town board, what should be done here, how should these be used? And number 9, recommendations for permanent elimination or restoration in places where there were 4 town landings that seem to have been eliminated. What should we do with these? Are they still in play, or what should we do? And then lastly, evaluate the town code as it affects these town landings and the usage of these areas. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next, that's a little introductory. These are our general recommendations to you this year now. And the first part of it was implement the remaining recommendations contained in the recommendations we issued to you in March, on March 31st. And if you could go to the next slide, I'm going to take you back to those initial recommendations. These are the recommendations, an outline of the recommendations we made in March a year ago. Reconcile town code, and I have arrows next to the portions that aren't done yet, that still have to be done. Reconcile town code chapter 36 with 37. Basically, town code 36 is beaches, 37 is driving on beaches, and we should probably bring them together. And this is maybe something that Stephen should work on, or however you folks want to assign this responsibility, but those two should be reconciled, and we only need one chapter because they both bear on each other. And then rename that new chapter beaches, shoreline access points, and parks. And then lastly, and I'm going to go through this with you, the definitions at the end of my presentation. Redo those definitions that we sent to you, make them part of the town code. And I know you're working on this, like one of them's who is a resident. And I know you folks are trying to be Solomon and decide who is a resident, but we have some suggestions as far as that's concerned. And then last arrow that hasn't been done yet of our recommendations last year, establish a shoreline access point review schedule. In other words, have somebody have somewhere where there's a tickler file that these things get reviewed maybe once every 3 years. Look at each landing, divide the landings up into thirds, and someone look and see that things are where they should be.
Can I
Yes,
interrupt
please.
you, or do you want to wait
Yes.
till?
No,
the end? All right.
please interrupt.
So on that last point, would you think that would be a good task to give to the WMAC, or do you think we should keep the Shoreline Access Task Force in operation?
I think it should go to the engineer's office.
Oh, okay,
I think that could be part of their work.
okay.
That way, certainly Joe can do it. Joe's successor in 20 years
Yeah.
Can pick it up. It's
Okay.
something that's in a file that has continuity, and someone's getting paid to do it.
It's a great idea. Okay.
That's just my recommendation. Okay. The next slide, please. So there's some specific recommendations this year. Okay. Now we're back to the general recommendations for right now. Formally designate all shoreline access points by category as Town of Shelter Island shoreline access points. Obtain surveys on all. There are 12 shoreline access points that don't have surveys. We have them enumerated in the schedule, which I'll show you later. They should be surveyed. Create new shoreline access point layer on the town's GIS. Now, we're in contract with the new GIS provider, and we think the shoreline access point should be one of the layers put in there, which wouldn't be very hard to do. Explore the feasibility of increasing public access to Deering Harbor. This was something that was recommended. There's really no public access to Deering Harbor other than Volunteer Park and the town dock. Now, where that's going to be found is a question, and I have to recuse myself on that one a little bit. Implement a rolling reevaluation of schedule, and that's something that I think that the town engineers could do. An ongoing evaluation is necessary, and that's kind of what I had suggested before. And prioritize the repair and improvement of existing ramps. A number of our ramps are deteriorated and deteriorating, and we should decide which one is in worse shape and get them fixed. For a number of reasons, for those of you who have used our town ramps and your boat gets stuck at the end, your wheels get stuck at the end of the ramp, it's not a fun situation. You wonder whether you're going to pull the back of your truck out or lose your boat. So these things, I think, have to be fixed. Next slide, please, Christina. Thank you. Okay, so these are additional site-specific recommendations we're making right now. If you all know, look at the entrance to Manana Creek, and Montclair Avenue is that road that's running east-west, and you see that swirl going out in the water there. That's accretion, that's sand building up there, and basically is blocking our town landing there. And it's basically the corner property homeowner's property he claims that, but it's getting to a point where we do have a little angle going out to the northeast of our town ramp, but if this accretion keeps up, we're going to have to do something there. So that's a problem that's going to have to be monitored and looked at. Next slide, please. This is Rocky Point Avenue. This became a very contentious issue. We, I think, settled as much as possible. Rocky Point Road North, move your arrow to the right, is extended. If extended, goes where that driveway is and out to the water. And the the homeowners in that area claim that that property has been taken over by the homeowner. We went through all our charts, town surveys and deeds, and can find no town ownership of that property and that dispute. And so this is a neighborhood dispute that has to be decided by neighbors, and we don't have a dog in this fight.
I think what Bo found was documentation from the very original homeowners association,
Right.
that this was their access.
That's theirs. And then it's been, but one of the problems is that that piece of property that's in contention is being taxed as real estate to that property owner, and that has to be fixed. It has to be dropped. We don't know why that happened, but at this point in time, I say it's a contentious issue, but we don't have a dog in that
Right.
fight. Okay?
Mhm.
And
So
then-
Peter, just excuse me, because, and we've heard a number of times that, we can't give up town landings. So let's be very specific. This was never a town.
No, it was
landing.
never a town. meeting.
Okay.
No, not as far as we know. Rocky Point Park never had it as a town. limit.
Right.
Second Causeway, north and south. So we're all familiar between the Little Ram and Big Ram Island, the Causeway, and this is also in discussion right now with the town. The only access now that the town would have is the old Ram's Head Inn dock. And we used to have two ramps on the north side facing Gardner's Bay, and two ramps on the south side. They were eliminated. The one ramp and one dock is still there. But the northern ramps were basically filled in with boulders because of Hurricane Sandy and built up and fortified. The question is, do we want to restore those there? And that's something that's still an issue. Do you want to do anything there? The last slide is next to last slide, South Midway Road. There's a question there about, this is a town landing. If you basically make a right angle out of that curve, this is going into Manana Creek. If you make a right angle out of it, that's a town landing, and that should be surveyed and marked and staked so that adjacent homeowners don't encroach on it.
That's really not accessible, though.
On a curve.
It's not accessible because of the brush and stuff there, but maybe.
And it's very steep.
Yeah, you could launch a kayak or something there, but the question is, do you want the homeowners to take it over, or do you want the
Right.
town to own their own ramp?
Mhm.
So these are all things that we had to deal with, and you folks will want to consider. And then the last slide is a little tricky. This is South Silver Beach Road. And if you extend, and the landing there, it's a bit covered by trees, but if you notice on the beach, there's a ramp there. You see that ramp?
Yep.
If you draw a line perpendicular to, from the ramp going seaward, going outward, parallel to that dock, if you could put your arrow there again, Christina. Now draw a line going east, east.
Into the water.
Into the water.
Into the water.
From the ramp. Well, okay, basically, there's some pilings out there, way out there, and
There are.
Oh, I
they
see that.
are, one or two of those pilings are within the boundary, not on the line, within the boundary. It should be 25 feet from our extended line. And we're just saying they're not a problem now, but if there's a future dock application comes up to put a float or anything in there, we have to take in consideration that they have to move it to the north.
Right, yes,
Okay.
that's a good point then.
All right, so that's basically it there. The next slide, please. These were our initial recommendations. You've already seen some of it. I'm just going to go, and then one after this one, please. These are the definitions we've come up with, and I won't go through each one, but we worked very hard on this and tried to, make them as commonsensical as possible. And then there was this question about beach and bathing beach and public bathing beach. And I think that if we could clarify our town code with these definitions, we really vetted them very well.
Peter, before you move on to the next page, mean high water.
Well,
Everybody
one
has a different
thing
idea.
I have to recommend it. I wish I could have played it. Tom Hashhagen wrote a song called Mean High Water. You know that? Yeah, it's great. It's a story about his walking on Crescent Beach and getting chased off. And he was below the mean high water
Right.
mark. And a mean high water, mean man was chasing him. And
awesome.
It's a great ballot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Because the reason I really bring it up, excuse me, is because, again, at Bootleggers Alley, we marked both sides of the landing
right,
and one sign's always underwater,
right.
you know.
Well, the thing is,
They did alter that, by the way. They said that that one to the left on the south side of the ramp
Right?
was brought back, last I saw.
Okay.
and
You know, it was, and Jerry's right. I mean, they're only 40 feet apart, 50 feet apart, maybe, one on one side, one on the other. But the one on the north side of the ramp was more true, and the one on the
Right.
south side, people were always in the water. You know, they put the mean high water way down.
so mean high water basically is the most recent rack line.
Yes.
And that you just have to use that common sense. And
Correct.
that's what our not even our founding fathers, our colonial fathers set out, that people have to have access to the water and that they don't necessarily have to own the property. They don't have to own the property, but they have to have access to the water so they can harvest salt hay or set their skiffs out or whatever. And sticking with that law and the two patents that govern us, the Nichols and Dungan patent, just generally common sense. If you're below the rack line, you should be safe. You should be able.
So
to
just so everybody understands, what's the rack line?
The rack line is the most recent display of
Okay.
jetsam
Mhm.
that is on the beach, seaweed,
Right.
rags,
Yep.
shells,
Yeah.
whatever.
That makes it pretty easy.
Right. Now, with a real big storm, obviously that line could be up on private property. That doesn't make sense. But
Right.
when the tides are normal and back and forth,
Right.
that's the line. And so if you're walking on that line, below that line to the foreshore, you're safe.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay? So that's kind of, I think if we deal with that on kind of a practical term, there was a couple of homeowners who actually had surveys that showed their property going out into the water, way beyond
Hmm.
Yes.
the high water mark.
Correct.
Right.
Now, something happened there, but it wasn't right. It's
Mhm.
not-
And it's possible that changes over the course of time too.
Right,
The
right,
great thing about using the rack line is that it adapts to change.
right.
When-
And that's the change, and the common sense person is taking a Sunday walk and say, oh, I
Correct.
can walk.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
When I was assessing, just to know, a homeowner came in with a new survey and they had lost property to
Right.
Yeah.
see, and, we reduced the size of their property. And, but then you have to change your deed and it has to be made note at the county. It's not a simple process, but just so the public knows if you think you've lost property.
Especially happens on outside waters.
Yes.
Because it's more aggressive.
Yes.
Right.
And the other excellent thing it does is it eliminates the need to have to put out signs.
Right.
So all those people at Bootleggers that wanted like 8 to 10 signs going right through the Silver Beach property all the way down, sign, 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 sign. Folks, there's the rack line. It's going to change this way, that way, a
And-
couple of feet, but
So Law enforcement, a cop comes
Yeah.
and says, someone's on my property, cop goes down there, no, they're down there, or, yeah, they are in the property, move down.
correct. correct.
So it makes it easy to
Yeah.
enforce
Mhm.
without fencing the whole lot.
Right.
All right, so these basically, I think, just go on and we try and get a definition of resident here, but obviously, when you folks get done with your definition of resident, it'll probably change. Next slide, please. Restricted parking, so we set up different kinds of parking on town. There's no parking with a fire zone, handicap parking, resident parking, and permit required. One of the issues about we had to seek a compromise. We couldn't say no parking at Bootleggers Alley anymore or some of these places anymore. And the compromise was being able to issue day permits to people who were non-residents. And I think that's worked out pretty well. And that's in place for
Yeah.
this year.
I know it's not the Bay Constable's job, but I know you're also over there. And how did it go last year with the parking?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Terrific. Yeah.
It's actually, Jerry, as of this weekend, there's still 1 or 2 cars that park on the O'Connor property, and they drop off the family, they fish, and it's nowhere near what it was a year or 2 ago. I mean, 2 years ago. But there are people that come out and fish, and it doesn't seem to be a major issue. But after you drop everybody off and everything, they bring the car back up, they park there, and then walk back down.
I won't pat ourselves too much on the back, but one of the reasons why things worked out is because COVID relinquished a bit.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah, I
didn't
was-
have the pressure that we
Yeah.
had before. So
I was gonna say a lot of the
that was-
other local beaches have opened back
Right,
up, you know,
sure.
during that period
Oh,
of
yeah. that was
high
true.
pressure where we had so many people coming to the beach. It was because all the neighboring towns shut down their beaches, which
Correct.
is what stressed our beaches, which
Totally.
is
Correct.
a very unique situation.
It was.
Yeah. So,
But it brought out the best and the worst in us, by the way, you know, and it did bring out the best and the worst in us. And it was very revealing, but cooler heads prevailed. And this committee had a lot to do with maintaining these cooler heads.
Jerry's point was well taken, and that is the people who, joined in with this really helped out a lot too.
Right.
I
They
think
did.
that- And then just the last slide is, or the last of this particular slides are just some more definitions for the part, well, I guess you have that one there, town ramp.
Mhm.
If you could put these in the town definition, a town landing, a public bathing beach, town dock, and town ramp. These are the categories of shoreline access points.
Yes.
Okay.
And they all kind of fit in there pretty well.
Mhm.
Okay. And a rack line, I think we just discussed that. Could you go back one slide? So there's a line of debris left on the shore following the most recent high tide. That
Mhm.
explains it. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you. Next slide, we have organized, we have, next slide. These are all, you
Wow.
can't see it on here, but there are little red blotches on here. Those are shoreline access points. And when we get our GIS, you can see it a bit, you'll be able to see it a bit better. But right now, these are the 70 shoreline access points, which are displayed. If you could go to the next slide, please, Christina. These are access points by alphabetically, just plain, or by site number, I guess that's right. So in other words, on a chart,
Mhm.
it's E1, E1, B1, so on and so forth. E stands for east side of the island. We kind of split it down with Fresh Pond still being on the east, on the west side, and then the W1, 2, 3, so on are the west side of the island. So we have a list by, in the first column, site number. Next slide is a continuation of this list. Next slide, please, Christina, is by alphabet. So obviously the numbers come first. 45A South Midway Road is that one I just discussed. Anyway, these are alphabetical, so you can find them alphabetically. And next two slides. Next slide is a continuation of the alphabetical. Keep going. And then this is by category, and I think this will be the most helpful. If you notice, public bathing, it's the same list, it's just
Mhm.
sorted differently,
Yeah.
you can see that. Public bathing beach, town landing. Next slide, please. Town landing, town ramp, through to town ramp.
Mhm.
And that's it. So that's the list that we would want to work from and put on a schedule to check every year, a portion of it every year to make sure, maybe different points, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So Christina, thank you for your help today. I didn't thank you in the beginning, but obviously you're holding up the world there. Thank you. So any other questions? We basically are waiting for you guys to make us walk the plank and send us off into the sea. Or do you,
Sunset.
what do you want to do as far as, well, you should discuss.
What do you think?
Well,
I think on a needs basis, you
yeah,
know.
I think on a needs basis.
Yeah, I think they've culminated 2 years of heavy duty work here, a heavy lift with a lot of time and energy, as you can see, put into this. I think, if the supervisor and town board feels there's a problem in the future that comes up, they want to get the committee reconvened back again to address that one particular problem, then you do so. But I don't see the need for having to keep the committee intact,
Yeah. Right. Andy, how do you feel about, do you have anything you wanted to say and add or?
As far as the committee,
Andy, could you
To the
come up here?
microphone.
Up to the mic.
we're discussing whether to continue with the
Yes,
committee or not.
yeah.
I think just to keep things in upfront, that maybe based on the need, once a year, once every 6 months, it
Right.
might be good to, cover new subjects
Yeah.
and look at some of the things that we've done, make sure that they're being implemented.
Yeah, I
That's-
think that's good.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting, since I've been on this committee, aside from my Bay Council job, I think I have my town landing hat on all the time.
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Think
Right.
about this
Yep.
all the time. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Andy's-
Yeah.
And
Thanks,
Andy, from
Andy.
the public safety aspect, is there any particular I mean, you brought it up during all our meetings and things like that.
Well, as far as the fire department, we want to make sure that the fire lane is maintained, those signs that say, no parking between these signs. And that, if we needed to get a truck down there for any reason, that some of the parking restrictions were there, but it seems like that's all within the recommendations.
Hey, Andy, I remember a discussion once that there were no official landings in high-low for the fire
Oh,
department.
you're working.
But you have the roads. Isn't that enough? Or?
Well, actually, I'm talking to the people in Hilo right now. They're trying to get, there's two roads that go down to
Yeah.
water there.
Yes.
One when you first come in.
Right on the right.
And
Yeah.
that's fairly accessible for us.
Yes.
Because the road just ends at the water and we can
Right.
get a truck there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other one, it's called Landing Lane. It's up the
Yeah.
hill.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
By the
that,
Krauses.
And it's,
Yeah.
By the crosses, right.
it's
Afterwards.
blocked by
Yes.
a mound of dirt and a bunch of shrubbery.
Yeah.
And we've been talking to Hilo, and we're getting some help talking to the DEC.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to be possible to level that mound and cut some shrubbery so we can access a truck in there.
Mhm.
Because right, like you say, there's no,
It's too long a way to go from one to the other. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
you
considerable.
want to have your
distance.
options when
Right,
there's a
correct.
fire like way up
Yeah.
the hill there.
Mhm.
You want to be able to go where
Correct.
closest to the.
Yeah, you're saving precious minutes to, difference
Yeah.
between able to control the fire and not control the fire.
So we're working on that, and I think it's gonna, Matt Sherman's helping us.
Great.
So,
All right. Thanks
Good.
for all your
Andy,
work too.
Peter,
Thank you all.
Peter,
all I
thank
can
you
say
very
before-
much.
Before you go is that this has been a 2-year effort and it's been tremendous. I mean, your leadership and Bo and the committee, you guys have done you've exceeded any expectations of this town board. It started, as the supervisor said, with bootleggers. We went to the high priority areas. And then year 2, you managed to take on the other 70, town landings, access points. And I think from clearing town landings, it's better than it's ever been now, especially during the winter months when we want these town landings cleared. To boat storage and all the stuff that you've done with boat storage, working with our Public Works Department, with the definitions, with proper signage, and I think the signage has been good, not in excess, but where needed. The repairing of the existing ramps, which is always a killer. I always thought that one at South Silver Beach, I used to take care of that all the time. I used to make their actual repairs and do the leaves myself and rake that whole area up. So I just think that safety and the parking situation, which you use good common sense and compromise, we couldn't be more proud of the work that you guys did. You did really
Well, I'm glad you-
exceeded any of our expectations, and it's a great document, a lot of hard work, and thank you.
It was truly an island-wide collaboration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And to say, pick a word from Stella's great talk. When you talk about crown jewels, our town landings are our crown jewels.
Right.
Yes,
Mhm.
there you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, next on the agenda, I asked Reed Karen to join us from the building department. As you know, we've had ongoing, Reed, why don't you, ongoing discussions about going to user fees wherever possible so that the general taxpayers aren't paying for everything. We have increased some fees so that we've increased the license fees so that we were able to hire a full-time code enforcement officer and a clerk for the building department, because the work in the building department has grown exponentially.
Yes.
So I think what we're gonna do today is just start the conversation of raising some of our fees, and Reed's gonna walk us through, why he picked what he did, and what's involved in him on our end. And
Is this everything, Reed? Like every fee you charge?
This is everything. This is actually virtually the same as what we discussed
Right.
last year. We tweaked a few things. But basically it's, the idea is to make it a little more of a progressive fee schedule so that people at the lower end of the schedule will not be paying appreciably higher fees. In fact, I think the way inflation's been this year, it doesn't even keep up with
Right.
inflation at the lower end of things. And then, we're getting big houses. We're getting a bunch of more and more of these really large houses, over
Time-consuming.
10,000 square feet or certainly over 8,000 square feet. And we wanted to make some other changes just to how square foot living area is defined, because it's somewhat clumsy. It's contradictory depending on where you are in the code, but that's another
And
issue.
more so than that, and one of the other things we're gonna have to address before the budget is the whole concept. Yes, we beefed up the building department, but we're seeing permit applications come in with, 400 pages of plans.
Time
Yeah.
consuming.
And, the Pridwin was a huge commercial venture.
Yeah.
And, maybe we need to have an outside
On some of the big
agent that
ones.
we can, bring in on some of these bigger ones. And to do that, you have to pay for it. So.
Yeah, I mean, a larger jurisdiction's building department really has people that specialize, and we don't.
Right, they do everything.
Everybody does everything.
So when you do your budget,
Yeah.
this year, I would say, a little category for consultancy, you don't spend it, we can, go back into.
Well, I've spoken to Jerry about this, and I think the way we want to do it is for these, I mean, if it's a small commercial thing, we can do that. That's no big deal. But the Pridwin and the Cheequit, these are, hundreds and hundreds of pages that require a lot of expertise, like, the designing whether the sprinkler system meeting code, the egress lighting meeting code. These are complicated and we just don't do it enough. And to do a proper one would take one of us probably a month and a half, 2 months. And what's available is the International Code Council and who oversee the codes and actually create the codes have an option that you can have them do the plan review. And what I discussed with Jerry is that on things like that, it would be up to the applicant to pay for that
Right.
review,
Mhm, mhm.
that it's outside of our.
Oh,
Right.
great idea.
Right. Yeah, we looked into it and it gets pricey,
Yeah.
but if if you figure out the man hours or person hours, then it actually is, probably cheaper than what the town is paying for one of us to do.
Mhm.
Would that have to go into code?
I was gonna ask Stephen, how would we implement something like that? It's gonna, on a significant project, where we have to bring in an outside agent that the homeowner has to pay for it.
Yeah, I'd recommend it be codified
Okay,
for something like that.
okay.
Yeah, we could figure out some way of defining the
Yeah.
criteria.
Mhm.
Yeah, because there would have to be a trigger when that would be something that would be passed on to the applicant. So we'd have to come up with a definition, just like maybe major project or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Number
we
of
could-
pages.
The other thing, maybe there's some way of, in the course of restructuring the fee, maybe we could do it in such a way that it's deducted from the town permit fee.
Mhm.
So that
Right.
they're not paying any more than they
Yeah, right.
would
Double dipping.
otherwise.
Yeah, yeah.
And again,
Yeah,
it's only.
yeah, that
we
would
got-
replace the town building permit fee,
Right.
because you're not
Yeah.
going to be doing anything above and beyond that review. However, we're still responsible for inspections and things like that. So there is
Yeah, I
a
mean, there's,
administrative cost associated with it. So yeah, we'd have to come up with something.
yeah, I think maybe what occurred to me, the way to do it is we would figure and then if we bump them to a outside inspection, not inspection, but
Vendor.
review process, that we would just deduct whatever their cost was from our fee.
Mhm.
I think that sounds
Right.
reasonable. And that way it's not,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
But we're really talking about commercial, right? Reed, not any residential.
we're talking only about large commercial. The residential is easy because
Yeah.
we're pretty fluent with that. But I mean, I've been
Yeah, so-
here almost 6 years. I have done one small commercial plan
Right.
review.
Mhm.
We just don't,
Mhm.
we don't do many of them.
Yeah, I think we are talking at some point about amending the site plan provision in the code, and I think we can incorporate this into that section. And, you know, and delineate between a minor site plan application and a major, and then the major will be farmed out with an added fee.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the whole thing, it's pretty much every significant project, residential or commercial, gets some sort of site plan review. People have to submit a site plan. Usually when we're talking about site plan review in capital letters, that's for, you know, a commercial project, and it's a sort of a separate avenue.
Yeah, we could just have a scale, and it's the weight of the plans. So, well, if it weighs over 2 pounds, you're getting punted.
Right, right.
Oh, when was this last done?
This, last night.
No.
Oh, wait, what?
Oh, I
Fee
wouldn't ask
structure.
you.
Oh,
to
the fee
give up your
structure? Yeah, we
secret.
actually, I went over it again with Mary Ellen last night. this
But
morning.
when was the last
Oh.
time the town upped them? I see current-
2018 is
Oh,
when it was
really?
codified. Yeah.
Wow. So is this a
It's 4
quick?
years ago.
Yeah, so, okay. all
It
right.
had not changed in something like 15 years.
Prior to
before
that,
that.
okay.
Right.
So even, you almost could think of this as a 2 and maybe a 3rd step to kind of get these up to where they belong?
A
Or do
lot
you
of
think?
these are not changed appreciably.
Okay.
Like the lower end of the residential stuff.
Right.
If you look on page. But it just seemed to me that given the amount of work that's being done and frankly, the cost of the projects.
Right.
This is a drop in the bucket.
Oh,
for
yeah, and
these-
the department's big. We just,
Yeah.
beefed it up.
Yeah,
Who's to say we won't have to do that again?
I
yeah.
like that we're losing $100 on revisions to permits currently.
Did we mess up?
I don't know, page 3.
Oh, no. Yeah, you know what?
I'm like, wait, what is?
I think what that is, where's page 3? Revisions to.
Revision to permit. Changes
Re-
made after notifying building department and submitting paperwork, negative $100.
That's a mistake.
Changes made without building
Wait a
department.
minute, where is this? Oh, changes. Oh, no, what that is that, no, what that is we have two different charges for the revisions.
Okay.
And it's, this is kind of it's hard to understand until you explain it. That's just a dash.
Ah,
But the issue is that currently, we charge $100 if we have to review revised drawings,
mhm.
if they come and tell us in advance. If we go there and say, whoa, what have you done? And they go, oh yeah, we changed that, and they revise it. It's just a little penalty because, you know,
easier to do it
it's,
before the-
they're supposed to ask us before and not just change something and then.
I think that should be somewhat, a little bit more painful. And I just mean it that, why wouldn't you take the chance? That you don't notice it.
Right.
I mean, that's
Well,
no,
You
that's
think
no,
like a contract.
that's no disincentive, $25. I don't know. I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
they
sometimes,
should be more punitive
That's it. Thank you.
for not following the rules.
yeah, I mean, it's sometimes, it's a tricky one. Maybe if we have some latitude there, because sometimes it's an honest mistake. And sometimes it's a semi-honest mistake, and sometimes it's downright
Right.
sneaky deceptiveness. So there's a certain amount of
Yeah.
leeway. In fact, sometimes we don't even charge it if we feel like somebody just didn't.
Right.
Didn't
You know.
realize
And I
that
think
it was-
also the impact, there's an impact to this, is what you did, a fixable or,
Mhm.
and non-impactful, is what you did damaging to the nearshore overlay.
Right.
There's two different,
Well, I think, yeah, and that brings me to another thing. We've never had any kind of codified fines for violations. And that, I don't know how that works, but in the past, we really haven't gone after people much with fines because our previous town attorneys were very reluctant to actually try and get fines out of people.
Mhm.
You know, I think it might be good to have a deterrent to
Mhm.
people doing stuff in the wetlands.
Right. Bigger than the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Yeah, as somebody, we had one not too long ago where a gentleman cleared his wetlands and was caught by the DEC. And although they were, you know, they come out guns a-blazing and threatened with $30,000 a day fines, he paid a $300 fine. And so then he was crowing about how he got to clear his wetlands for $300.
Right.
Which,
Views intact.
right.
You know, my one comment is on fences where we have, you know, no permit required, $0 to 75. The justification there is because problems with fences that violate regulations. One of the, and that's a big problem, that has been an ongoing problem in Silver Beach. And I know there's
Mhm.
people calling me as president of Silver Beach saying, Jimmy, check this fence out, check that fence out. I've had more phone calls in the last 2 years on fences that either, you know, what is a 6-foot fence doing in the front, or it's too close to the road, or, you know, it's, you know, different violations with fences. One of the pieces that I'd like to see too is an educational piece. You know, I know it's in the
Right.
town code, but there's nothing like getting, maybe one of the two papers would like to do, you know, a story on just to educate the public.
Right.
You know, because when you put a fence in, first of all, you know, there are regulations about fences. Think about the type of fence that you're putting in, what that looks like to your neighbor,
Mhm.
you know, good side faces out, all those good kind of things that, you know, property lines, this is something you have to think about a little bit, you know, before you just throw up a fence. And we have so many companies that come off island that do fences, you know, that they disregard, they just do whatever the homeowner wants.
Yeah.
Homeowner maybe either doesn't know or doesn't care, or just says, you know, but it's, you know, when called to task on it, and you guys have followed up on all the ones at Silver Beach, they have to come back in, rip that perfectly good fence out, go from a 6-foot to a 4-foot, you know. I just think that a little education is important too for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, we spend way too much time probably doing it individually.
Right.
Because we get, I would say fences and lighting
That's another.
are probably,
Fences and lighting is another one.
yeah, those are, fences and lighting are our biggest complaints.
Yeah.
May I suggest that we prepare like a handbook for residents that you can just hand out when people come in for questions, that, you know, you can come up with like the top 10 questions that are asked and have those answers in easily digestible form for people.
Give them to the real estate agents too.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, handbook wouldn't be a bad idea. We could also have, like, you know, the different Clark families and how they're not related, and the hagiography of the Clark.
Yeah.
Also, Reed, do you, for as-built structures that come in and people want to legalize them and submit building permit applications, do they pay the plain vanilla building permit application fee, or do they get whacked with the as-built fee?
Oh, you mean if they,
Higher.
if they built a structure that's unpermitted and non-conforming?
No, conforming, but not without a permit. So like, say if someone built a detached garage in a conforming location without any building permit, and then came in, wants to sell and wants the building permit to legalize and ultimately get a certificate of compliance for that garage. Is it this, what fee do you charge them?
That's we charge a 5. Anytime we find something that was done without permits, the penalty is 5 times the permit fee plus the permit fee.
5 times?
5 times, yeah. That's been the tradition on here forever.
And that's it. That's not on this list though, is it?
I think I brought something about, I put something in there about how I would like to codify it. Because I think towards the end, because that's something I wanted to discuss, because it's never, I shouldn't admit this, but it's never been actually in the code. It's just been something, it's just been policy, yeah.
Well, not, well, all these fees aren't in the code per se, right? This is all just
No,
policy.
yeah,
So,
they're,
like, because in my previous life, it was always double the building permit fee if you're legalizing structures 5 times plus. That's good eating.
But the building fees here are lower, so
Building fees
it kind of works out.
It's
Yeah.
$100.
well, I mean, it's sometimes double is, I mean, if you have a garage and it's a $300 permit fee, it's worth rolling the dice sometimes that you might get away with it.
Well, no, but no, it's a valid point that our fees are lower because in other municipalities, the fees are quite high. And so that's why it's double. But yeah, 5 times would make sense here. But
Yeah.
Yeah, but that should be put on this list somewhere so people know.
Yeah, I actually put it, I guess Mary Ellen didn't.
Yeah, no,
No, I didn't get a chance to go through it completely, but if it's
Not
not
to
on.
throw Mary. I should have.
one of my esteemed assistants.
No, actually, I guess that was just, it was something, it's on my list of things to bring up, but I guess I didn't put it on because she has everything.
Has it ever been challenged where sometimes where you got to this and you say, by the way, you owe me 5 times plus the,
Has it ever been
Yeah.
challenged? What do you think, Jim?
I would say most definitely.
Yes, it has been
And
challenged.
how has that gone for the town with? county in-
Well, sometimes, well, just a lot of yelling usually. is-
Yeah.
that's challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they end up paying it or no?
Yeah, they end up
They end
paying
up
it.
paying it, okay.
They want to get their permit, they
Yeah.
do.
Does, has the town attorney ever played a part in that, or is that just something between the building department and? the-
Not to my knowledge. It's
Okay.
been, it's just been
Okay.
again, it's one of those things that if we feel that it was done in good faith, sometimes the fee gets waived. But if we feel that it's done out of duplicitousness,
Mhm.
somebody trying to sneak
Sure.
something in, then, there is a certain amount of empathy that goes to people that are just sort of doing something on their own but when they very often we find we have several situations going on at the moment where a homeowner comes in, asks if they need a permit for something, we tell them yes, and they don't want to do it because it might be expensive, might be a few $100. So then the contractor will come in and say, do they need a permit for this? The homeowner said they don't. And so, yes, we do. We spoke to them about it. Oh, they said that they spoke to you and you said they didn't need a permit for it. So, I mean, there's a lot of lying about this.
Reed, I would advise though, going forward, that there is no good faith exemption. Unfortunately, I think that the fees should be what they are and they should be blind. So, but we could talk more about that.
Right. I think that's been one of those shelter island policies.
Okay, so what I would suggest is we all digest this. Christina, we put this online for the public and give us a couple of weeks read and then we'll
Okay.
come back to it, okay?
All right.
Okay, anything else for Reed? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thanks, Reed. Reed's fees.
Okay, we'll go around the board, the table for the board reports. Jim?
All right, just a reminder for the board, not necessarily for the town, because it's really a program for Senior Day. Is at Camp Quinnipiac. We have 22 seniors coming in, starting at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, ending at 2:30. There's singing, there's crafts, there's lunch. There's a whole bunch of good things happening. So if you have, 15 minutes, half hour, you want to stop by, see what's going on there, I think the people that are running that would greatly appreciate it. Tomorrow I have a Zoom meeting.
When's lunch served?
I'll speak to you about it afterwards. I'll give everybody the rundown on the time frame there. PEP meeting tomorrow from 10 to 12. These meetings once a quarter. Did you say once a week?
No, you're the one that called for him.
No, this is them. And then I have a 2 o'clock in Riverhead with the aquarium. They were actually, one of the big things that the PEP is trying to do is educational piece. So there's going to be some new kinds of programs offered at the aquarium. that PEP is picking up to educate people about the importance of wetlands and things of that nature. So it's a photo opportunity.
Yeah, nice.
I want you there for that. Mashomic, we do have a new person that's now on board. This is from Rebecca as of May 4th. I'm pleased to welcome our new Mashomic Preserve Conservation and Steward Manager. Her name is Cody Marie Miller. Cody hails from the Nature Conservancy in Florida, and as a land conservation coordinator, she was part of a team responsible for 23,000 acres, including 2 flagship preserves, the Disney Wilderness Preserve, which is big, and the Tiger Creek Preserve. Cody will oversee planning, directing, and implementing stewardship programs, preserve management and maintenance, and the running of the visitor center, including the development of exhibits and curriculum. Cody will work with colleagues statewide on conservation strategies, enhancing visitor experiences, and maximizing Mashomic's conservation impacts.
So here's the big question. She's gonna get on the Deer and Tick Committee?
That remains to be seen, but we will get somebody from,
Yeah.
And hopefully she'll be the person that'll be a good link in for her. Okay, but she is on board. We'll just
Great,
let
yeah.
her get her feet wet there, and they always have some things planned. They're getting back to visitor centers starting
Yeah,
to open
I
up
saw that.
part-time, environmental ed programs going forward. So they're doing some
Good.
things. Memorial Day, we're going to have a full ceremony on Memorial Day. I'm putting that together for the Legion. Would like to announce that we will have our first parade in 3 years.
Monday morning,
Full
right?
ceremony Monday morning, yes. Lions Club will also sponsor refreshments and some type of lunch, probably hamburger, hot dog kind of thing at the end of the parade and after the speeches are finished. The schools cannot partake because they don't have a choir anymore.
A band? They don't have a
They
band?
don't have a band, no. They're
Wow.
rebuilding their band, but they do not have a band. Last thing I have is on CAC. They met last night. We talked about 4 Dawn Lane. We talked about that at the April 11th meeting, but we talked about it again last night. We had 4 items that were recommended, but then Rob came on, who was handling 4 Dawn Lane.
This is for a wetlands permit?
Yes, yeah, and actually refuted the 4 things that we had recommended, which I'll go over in greater length with you, but there are a couple things on that application that we're standing firm with.
Okay.
All right, and then we looked at 14 Peconic Avenue, Weissenfeld, by a vote of 7-0. They approved it, and they have some recommendations that I will share with you at a later time. And then we looked at the 3 Pandian acquisition, which is the second property on the left as you move in, the center property. And it's a C zone. They're putting a new IA system in. One of the interesting things that they're doing there, in order to avoid any dewatering, because there is going to be a partial full basement in the bottom, is they're raising the property up around the house 4 feet.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot
Lot
of
of
fill, based on a house that's fairly good size. But again, there's a lot to the house is, 10,000 square foot kind of house, but it's on a huge piece of property. They have a very sophisticated IA system that's going in there. They've done some very good things there. Matt was on, Sherman was on the line. He's representing that project. So that was good. Then I'm happy to say that we had all 7 people. John, has been working late hours, but has got there as well. The 2 new committee members have been outstanding. We did finally finish off the meeting by talking about green options opposite the Arts and Crafts Fair the 3rd week in August. I told them to get involved with Tim Pertel, but we would like to get the CAC involved in that. So we have, especially with the new members. New members seem to be very active in wanting to move in that direction. So, I'll give you a full printout of that report, but good meeting, what a couple hours, a lot of discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Meg?
Yeah, just a sort of housekeeping bit. Now that it's getting nicer out and spring is coming, I would like homeowners to be mindful of their hedges and make sure that there is visibility and that they're maintaining some form of a shoulder on their property, because it becomes dangerous when there's no visibility and people are trying to pull out of driveways and you can't see pedestrians walking or biking.
And pedestrians have
And-
no place to jump to.
Yeah, and it's good for people and animals too, to have a place to get out of the road.
Yeah.
So if you have a huge hedge and you find that it's overgrown and it's kind of moving into the street, please be courteous and trim it back so that there is line of sight. We don't notice these things in the winter, but when spring comes around, we start to realize how much things have overgrown, and please be mindful of your neighbors and the other people in the community and make sure that there's safe access around the public streets.
That is such a great recommendation. I just want to remind everybody that if the town comes in and they bring their highway crew in, they're going to go back 12 feet, from probably, and
Is it
it
12
butcher a lot more of that green growth that you have there, whether it's a tree, bush, shrub, or privets, than you would like. And it's become a problem in the past where we usually go to the homeowner, tell them that we need their cooperation. Hopefully they cooperate and have their own landscapers do it. We accept a little modified, they take it back 6 feet, half of the distance on that. That's something that we're looking for. But it far exceeds the hedges. It's bushes, trees. I go around Silver Beach. I can spot 20 places where it becomes a safety issue for people on bicycles, walking, cars. I mean, it's homeowners, you have to be responsible for that. I mean, I know the town owns it, but you planted the stuff there and you need to act
trimmed.
accordingly, But
Meg, I
that's a
think the
great
highway
thing.
superintendent is in the process of sending letters out to the real
Egregious,
serious
yeah.
violators. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hills and
Yeah.
curves are really the dangerous spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of sharp turns down by me, and it can be hard to see when all the hedges start to
Oh, yeah.
grow. Like
Yeah.
in the winter, you can kind of see through the hedges, so you can see around the turns, but once they become flush, it's
Yeah.
really hard to see. You can't.
Not only that, over time, certainly pedestrians learn this isn't safe.
Right.
So
this
you
is a
kind of
blind
take away
spot.
their right to use the street, which is that's just unfair. You know.
Anything else?
That's what I have.
Okay, BJ?
Okay, I have a couple of things. So just to make an announcement, there's only a couple of early afternoon spots left for boosters at the library. If anybody's looking for a COVID booster at the library on Thursday, call the senior center, Sarah
That's
Monday,
this
or
Thursday?
anyone this Thursday, the
Okay.
12th, right? The 12th? Yeah. Okay, so there's that announcement. And met this morning with Taylor's Island. They have they're doing their normal housekeeping in spring and getting Taylor's Island ready for many visitors. They are interested in trying to set up automated tours where you would sort of scan a QR code and learn about that particular thing, or maybe the whole island. Instead of a lobster bake this year, cost of food is sort of outrageous. Fire department's finding that. Taylor's Island's finding that. So they're looking to maybe organize a picnic day. That's still in flux, what day, and how that will actually wind up looking, but it might be a really nice way for the community to get together out there. They are having a couple of sessions of plein air painting. So if you like to be outdoors and you like to paint, go to I think it's on their website, how to sign up for that. And just a little bit of good news or pleasant news. A local resident had planted a tree, and one of the committee members said to the local resident, like the tree, where'd you get it? What is it? We need one on a new tree to be a replacement on Taylor's Island. And that resident we didn't know wanted to be named, so I'm not naming him anyway, just said, oh, let me just cover it for you.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so
Nice.
it's really
Very
nice,
nice.
right?
Very nice.
Shelter Island, Shelter Island. So there's that. Then my next thing is, yesterday was a CPF meeting, really an uneventful meeting for all intents and purposes. With a lot of business covered. The CPF is really, I don't want to say morphing, but the part of their remit that that involves taking care of the lands that we have already is really expanding, because they've expanded it, and I mean that in a very positive way. These lands are now usable, and that's sort of a great thing. So yesterday, it's revamped the trail open space maps. I think that was the reference to the paper ones because things have happened and changed. Then another place where they would like to use QR codes at the property that people could download a map maybe to their phone if they wanted of the trail, or also information about the history of the property, et cetera. Oh, that's already. Oh, okay. Oh, the boundaries maps would be on that. Okay, would be added to the QR code, right? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. I totally misunderstood. And they want to, Gordon Gooding has been talking to the school, the shop teacher, about etching maps for 4 sites to start, and they would be put up sort of in a little kiosk. And also the school would build the kiosks with, the CPF pays for the materials. These are projects for the shop students to undertake. It just sounds like a really nice synergy for the island. Who knows, before the summer break or after, but it's percolating and in process. They mentioned yesterday that Oak Hill, AKA Dickerson Overlook by Fresh Pond, that needs a new stewardship plan that they'll be working on. A new acquisition plan needs to be developed, but that's tabled until the town board comes up with criteria. I didn't get a chance in the moment to question that order, because I'm not wondering if, well, the CPF is where the knowledge is. So should they not propose an acquisition plan to the town board for us to consider, and then it becomes a dialogue back and forth. So that's, again, another TBD, to be determined.
Just on that note.
Yeah, go ahead.
DJ.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a bad thing as long as the liaison can reflect what the 5
Right.
of us feel needs to be implemented in that new plan.
What do you think? Yeah. Oh,
Well, I mean-
which, you mean us coming up with it and giving it
No,
to
no,
them?
no. Just being able to have some guidelines on.
I'd like it to-
What
yeah.
we're looking for,
Right.
in terms of more flexibility.
Right, exactly. And I just think it's, perhaps it's just because this is why I'm an old school paper person, or email person, but just to get a plan that you can then say, oh, to correct it, to edit it, it seems to me, especially when there's a knowledge base there, that would be sort of an efficient way to go about it, from our point of view, to task them with it. And then we are dialoguing back to them what we would need. But again, just another, a conversation to continue to have. Tui brought up that the goal in July is to maybe devote the whole meeting to the renewal of the stewardship plan overall. Kind of an important thing. The West Neck Preserve, they put out for bids to landscape redo. Landscape sounds too fancy, but you know what I'm saying, improve West Neck Preserve. And they have gotten 2 bids, waiting for 2 more. They kind of extended the deadline now till the end of May. They'd be happy with 3 total to consider. Busy season for the landscapers though,
What
so
do they plan on doing with all the mulch that they have down there?
I didn't ask.
Because that water, it's going to become a mosquito heaven.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime it rains.
tick,
there's a
right?
pond- Yeah, that's where I took the pictures of that red-tailed hawk
Yeah,
bathing in there. But it's constant.
yeah,
Any heavy rain you get,
Right.
it would fill up double this room.
right.
It's a good size
Oh,
little
it's a-
lake. in there.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just email Tim or about that
Yeah, and
question.
the other thing on West Neck is that I heard that
Mm-hmm.
Brian's down there with Gordon, and it came up at last night's meeting when we talked about this, is they're looking for some ADA compliance, that it's a nice
Yes.
flat piece of property
Mhm.
where our goal is to get seniors out, even in wheelchairs, that way we have trails that we can bring people out and get them out in some fresh air in the nice weather. So I think that's a possibility for that property.
Yeah, definitely. There was, I was just gonna, on the agenda yesterday was a presentation, Lori Finelli from the senior center, not a presentation, but I just think again, a dialogue, but they had to cancel. So that is again, front of mind in the idea of what to do, how to improve West Neck Preserve.
Right.
We talked again about the meta committee, that's what I call it, where it's the representatives from each of the 5 towns, CPFs, that meet on a regular basis that has fallen off. And so I'm just gonna nag Jerry to contact Fred Thiel and to see if we can't get that going again, because it's really it is important. CPF needs, wants, desires are evolving, and that is a really good sounding board. And let me just say that this this idea of, I don't know where it came from, but Gordon's been talking about it for a while. So, it's really time to sort of try to help him get that going. There was a question at the end of the meeting. Is Pam still on? I don't have my
Yes.
group up. Oh, the Pam Demarest asked about Osprey Acres. And it's such a coincidence that it came up, in a CPF meeting because it's preserved land. And then I heard a rumor that, is out there that we're thinking about developing the inside of Ram Island for community housing. It's just funny how a zeitgeist gets built. Anyway, the center of that island is owned by the 20 adjacent property owners. But at the time of transfer to those 20 owners, from my quick perusal of the title history, deed history, the development rights were stripped and transferred to the town of Shelter Island, which Stephen has told us that means they're extinguished. Unless at the moment when you take a development right away from a property, at that moment, if you put it in a bank, you could then use it for community housing somewhere else. In this case, those development rights, even though it says owned by Shelter Island, it actually says it on the tax map that development rights are Shelter Islands. They are extinguished. And I saw on the deed, it was the county, in the county handwriting, the red pen, on the deed cover sheet that said, make note on the map, development rights to town of Shelter Island. I don't know why that was done at that time, but there you have it. It's an unusual note, but there it is. And the final thing on that is it has no assessed value, when you look on the assessment roll, because it's divided, the assessed value is 800,000 because it's stripped parkland. So it's a lower, as you would imagine, assessed value. And that assessed value is partitioned to the 20 owners. So their value goes up by 40,000 than it normally would be, so that their tax bill then reflects that assessed value. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Yeah. So that was Al devised that, and it seems to have worked well, in terms of just getting the town's nickel.
So in summary, we purchased the development rights and they're.
Yeah.
But the property itself is owned by the 20 neighboring homeowners. and
Correct.
There is no plan to develop it.
Because you can't.
Because you can't. Okay, just want to make that very clear.
Very clear. Okay. And then that's it for me on the CPF. Like I said, it was as usual, a good meeting with lots of ground covered.
Amber?
Yes. Christina, can I get the screen share for a minute? Starting off with Community Housing Board, hold on a second, let me just, there is, the church in Sag Harbor is hosting a community housing forum. And you're seeing everybody's picture, right?
Yeah.
Or are you seeing the church? Okay, so what did I do?
I'm not seeing the church.
Okay. Oh, now you can see it. Okay, good. All right. This is next Thursday, May 19th, starting at 9:30. And I just wanted to let the rest of the town board know that it's out there. It's going to be an all-day panel. And I know right now that there's at least 4 of us going, 3, I think 2 people from Community Housing Board, 1 from the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board. It's out there for all. I did, when going over it with Liz and Maria, say that, if there's any members on those boards who wish to participate, that they can get reimbursement. We have money in office and admin for people to go. But it looks like it's going to be an interesting panel that, some of the town board might be interested in. Who needs housing, there's zoning and legislative considerations, attainable housing in practice from the national perspective, local development on Eastern Long Island, and then town hall afterwards. So I just want to put that out there. It's, a little over a week away, so people can consider that on their calendars. And then the other thing was, as well, we've been in this meeting, Frez from Suffolk, part of Suffolk County, has an allotment of additional COVID-19 tests. So I was texting back and forth with Chief Reed as emergency management coordinator to see whether or not they work on that. And he works on getting them for, town employees, especially EMS and PD one. So I'm going to work with Judy so that we can get an allotment of those. We'll try and see how many we have left, because we had a huge,
Not
Does
many.
it-
How many?
Okay,
And-
good.
No,
And they
it's pretty much
expire.
gone. They expire
In May
in
too.
May at the end of this month, so.
We
Yes.
could use-
we could
Yeah,
use
so
more.
we'll work
At
on
least
getting some more of
2,500.
those. Say that again, Jerry. I'm sorry.
At least 2,500 last
That was a
time.
lot.
Yeah, we don't need that this time, but.
Yeah, I think Jim Colligan single-handedly handed out at least half of those. So maybe you don't need to work so hard this time. But yeah, so I just want to let the public know that we'll be getting some of those in. I don't know exactly when, but we'll make sure that they're available for people, especially as the national numbers, the state numbers, and the county numbers are starting an uptick.
Yep.
And that's all that I had.
Okay. Stephen, you have anything?
No, Mr. Buzz.
Hey, Dottie?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have anything for us? Sandra O'Connor.
You're muted, Sandra.
Okay, now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, this is just about the Shoreline Access Task Force recommendations. I know one of the classifications that the task force was asking the town to consider is town beach. And I remember that Bob DiStefano said that could be a problem, that inferred that there were
Swimming rights?
Yes,
Bathroom.
exactly. Lifeguards, bathroom facilities. So
Remember
I now that Bob is gone and we have a new town attorney, I just want to mention that because I know, and while Peter was speaking, I was frantically going through my file because I know I have that in an email from Bob, which I printed out, but I can't find it right now. So I think that is an issue that should be addressed before that designation is codified.
I think we talked about possibly the signage. This is not a bathing beach, or swim at your own risk, or.
Well,
Yeah.
funny you should say that, Jerry, because that I did find him in an email that I had with him. And he said that that's even worse to say swim at your own risk. And I can try and find that, but that has another problem attached to it. Wasn't there some history with that, with Fresh
Menhaden.
Pond, maybe? Am I remembering somebody?
I think
Anybody?
I think it goes back just to the whole
Amber knows.
liability issue with.
Yes,
You know, if it's a recognized town beach, then it should be supervised.
right. Yeah. And then Jim Colligan was talking about how the parking at Bootleggers worked pretty well last year, and that he was aware, and I witnessed this too, that people were dropping off their the people in their car and then going and parking, particularly around West Neck Preserve, where you didn't need to have a permit. But one thing I would just mention is that unfortunately, I witnessed often that when that happened, the trash that the participants in that car had accumulated got left where they had parked their car and pulled out, including fish heads and just general garbage. And nobody's picking that up. Well, I was because I walk there every day. But I just mentioned that, and I do think that still continues to be a problem, whether the person has parked legally with a permit, that garbage just gets left where they parked, even despite the fact that there are receptacles. And I don't know whether this happens in Menhaden Lane or others. And I don't know whether it should be the town that should be, once a week Or it should be the homeowners whose property the debris has been left in front of. I'm not sure. I just mentioned that. And then the other thing, I just want to be clear about something. So are we now saying that the mean high water mark is irrelevant and that public versus private is distinguished by the rack line? Is that what
Their suggestion was to identify the rack line as the mean high water mark.
Okay. So you aren't proposing that those signs that are there now be removed, just the problem is the rack line changing.
I don't think they're gonna be removed, but I don't think we're gonna be putting up signs everywhere about the mean high water mark.
Especially since
It's
some
the
of those signs are
enforce-
underwater.
It's the enforcement piece that the Peter was referring to. You know, you can put the sign anywhere you want. Some are far forward, some are not far enough forward, but just the rack line is something that's easily enforced right there.
But how
And
do you tell people that that's the distinguishing line?
You educate people, you know.
Maybe it needs
I
to be,
get
maybe
more
there needs to be a
criticism.
sign.
I get more criticisms with the overabundance of signs as
Right.
well. So they wanted us and then the homeowners along that area south of the bootleggers wanted the Silver Beach Association put 4 or 5 signs. And we as association said, no, we don't want to spoil the look of that beach with 4 or 5 signs. For the most
Right.
part, people do stay, where they're supposed to stay. But that's up for us. We go down there, we police it ourselves on only day you got to police it, 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. So we take care of that. Make sure
Well,
that
but
people look.
but the Silver Beach Association beach, there is no distinguishing private, public, right? Because
No.
you're a not-for-profit, it's open to the
Correct.
public. You can't,
Correct.
right,
Correct.
right. Okay.
10 minutes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Oh, wow.
Anybody else?
You have anything, Joe?
Pam Demarest.
Good afternoon. Thank you, BJ, for that clarification on Osprey Acres. That's very
I
helpful.
was,
and
I,
did
you
get
know,
your
it's so
email.
funny. It's so funny, Pam. I'm not taking up your time. It's just that it was such an interesting thing when I was an assessor and I can't believe how completely I forgot it. So it was really nice to get it refreshed. Thank you.
Okay, and the only other question I have, I just briefly looked at the list on the shoreline access points, and I do not see Middle Harbor Road as a listing for the landings. Can someone double check that for me?
Good point. It's a good question. I see it on the map, Pam, but
Yeah, I just don't see it on the list. And I know I've been in the meetings and discussed it with Bo, and we know what the situation is there, but it still should be listed as a town landing, I believe.
I couldn't, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Is it listed alphabetically?
Yeah,
There
I'm
is
looking at
one
the
of them.
alphabetical list. It's not on there
Yeah.
unless it's just Harbay Road and I'm looking under M.
Mm.
Yeah, but Harbay Road is a different landing.
Yeah, nope, I don't see it on here. Good catch.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? Julie, you good?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll ask that we go into executive session to discuss litigation regarding the Harbay Road dock.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks for the lead in, Pamela.